Chapter 4603. Immortal Emperor Go Chen's words were emotional, but Xiao Hua knew that this was only Immortal Emperor Go Chen's method of ruling. He wanted to retort, but seeing that Immortal Emperor Go Chen seemed to be relenting, he went along with Immortal Emperor Go Chen's words and said, "Your Majesty's hard work, I can understand it. Just controlling the fortune gate already gives me a headache, not to mention Your Majesty controlling the hidden immortal continent." So, Immortal Emperor Go Chen nodded and said, "Master Xiao Lei must understand me. I also said the same thing to the Nangong family in the Ling Yun Palace. If you want to marry the 9th princess, you can. However, you have to show me your strength and save the 9th princess with your own strength." Now, other than the Nangong family, the Dongfang family, Shimin family, and Baiming family have also formally proposed marriage with the other 3 princesses. Hee, do you think I don't know what they are thinking? Don't they all want the 5 energy unification technique? However, these 4 families are indeed places that my 4 princesses can be entrusted to. I gave the Nangong family a difficult problem to let the other 3 families see that my princesses are not to be casually married. Would rather bear a bad name and let others and family see me as a cold-blooded person to find someone worthy of my princess's trust. And Xian is even more so. Immortal Emperor Go Chen's golden chair emitted a golden light, and a shadow rushed into the sky. Immortal Emperor Go Chen's voice finally came, "That's all I have to say. If Master Xiao Lei doesn't believe me, you can fight your way to the Ling Yun Palace." "Oh, Scholar Palace Master, I know you have a good relationship with Master Xiao Lei. You can follow Master Xiao Lei to the hidden immortal continent to search. This subject respectfully sends off Your Majesty." Sun Jian's cultivation was the lowest among them. Seeing that Immortal Emperor Go Chen had said all he needed to say, he hurriedly bowed and said. As Immortal Emperor Go Chen flew away, the golden light in front of the palace disappeared, and the guards could see the situation inside again. At this time, Xiao Hua looked at Immortal Emperor Go Chen's flying figure and felt helpless in his heart. Immortal Emperor Go Chen said so much, but it was all nonsense. He didn't reveal where Xin was imprisoned. But all this nonsense was to tell Xiao Hua, how could the princess of the Immortal Palace be easy to marry? If you want to marry the new princess, then you have to show your strength and find out where the new princess is imprisoned. After all, the Nangong clan also didn't obtain any useful information from Immortal Emperor Go Chen. Damn it, I messed around in the Immortal Palace for half a day, but I didn't even take a single step into the southern heavenly gate. Xiao Hua gnashed his teeth in hatred as he inwardly cursed. Furthermore, I can't say anything. He was trying to find a reliable lover for his daughter. No wonder he could become an immortal emperor, while I can't even be the Fortune Gate's gate chief. Fellow Celestial Immortal, thank you for your skill. If there is a chance, we will spar again in the future. Farewell. The Jade Pure Palace Master was the first to bid farewell. He nodded at the Celestial and left on the purple cloud. The Celestial being also put on a good show and said, "The Lord of the Jade Pure Palace is very powerful. I also admire you greatly." On the other hand, the Grand Purity Palace Master wasn't in a hurry to leave. He looked at Xiao Hua and said calmly, "Master Xiao Hua, I was a little reckless today." "Sigh, it's fine." What else could Xiao Hua say? They were both supreme cultivators of the human race. Although there was a difference between Confucianism and Daoism, they were already very close to the final step. Their previous battle wasn't particularly desperate, so he could only wave his hand and say such words. "Actually, I'm curious about. Why can't Master Xiao Hua enter the profound yellow list?" The Grand Purity Palace Master said again. This profound yellow list was refined by the ancient purple micro-immortal emperor using an immortal imperial artifact. Previously, it was used to record the rankings of the experts of the Confucian, Buddhist, Daoist, and demon races. It was only used after Taoism declined that it was used. Therefore, as long as one hasn't transcended the laws of the 3 continents, one can enter the profound yellow list. This king can, the Jade Pure Palace Master can, Immortal Emperor Go Chen, the 7 sages, the Mahavarakana World Lord, the Dipankara Archaic Buddha World Lord, and the Maitreya Buddha World Lord can all enter. Why can't you? Xiaohua bitterly smiled and rubbed his nose. How would I know? I'm afraid I'll have to trouble the Grand Purity Palace Master to ask the Purple Micro-Immortal Emperor about this. Forget it. The Grand Purity Palace Master bitterly smiled. This king is too stubborn. If Master Xiaohua isn't willing to say, then so be it. This Xiao really doesn't know. Xiaohua spoke the truth. However, the Grand Purity Palace Master didn't seem to believe him and only cupped his hands, saying, "This king will take his leave. If you have time in the future, Master Xiaohua can come to my Grand Purity Palace with the Literature Stream Palace Master as a guest." Although there are differences between Confucianism and Daoism, this king doesn't look down on Daoism too much. Alright, I hope such a day will come. Xiaohua had already seen the Grand Purity Palace Master's Daoism cultivation. He wasn't surprised by his words and only cupped his hands, sending off the Grand Purity Palace Master who had caused trouble. Master Xiaohua. After everyone left, Sun Jian bowed and said, "This junior really didn't expect you to receive the title of Master Xiaohua the moment you came to the Immortal Palace. This junior is very envious." Damn it. Xiaohua didn't feel any pressure facing Sun Jian. He smiled, saying, "Your Immortal Emperor's schemes are truly formidable. This Xiao really isn't his opponent. Sigh, if there wasn't such an Immortal Emperor, how could my military school control the entire Immortal Palace?" Sun Jian thought of what he saw in the Immortal Palace and sighed. Actually, there are some things that he might not be willing to do. For example, Master Xiaohua. If Senior didn't force him here, how could he give the title of Master Xiaohua to Senior? Senior, put yourself in his shoes. How much determination would he need to give a Daoism cultivator the title of Master Xiaohua of the Immortal Palace? Yes, this is also the reason why this Xiao didn't force him too much in the end. Xiaohua also sighed. However, a moment later, Sun Jian bowed again and said, "Of course, if Master Xiaohua didn't come today, this junior wouldn't be able to kill my enemy. This matter, I still have to thank Master Xiaohua." Xiaohua hurriedly supported Sun Jian and said with a smile, "You and I don't need to be polite. This Xia Xan is our common enemy. This matter. This Xiao also has to thank Immortal Emperor Go Chen. If it wasn't for his immortal slaying platform, we wouldn't have been able to kill a 9th grade Wenxing." Indeed. Sun Jian nodded. His Majesty's immortal slaying platform is most useful for Confucian cultivators, but it doesn't have much effect on Daoists and Buddhists. It is said that the Grand Mist Ancestor escaped from this immortal slaying platform that day. Forget it. Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and said, "This old man will take his leave. You should return to the Immortal Palace and keep an eye on the Flower Medicine Palace. Don't let that Immortal Emperor who was driven crazy by Empress Dowager fool around. This old man still has to think about how to find Xianxia's whereabouts." Sun Jian was slightly embarrassed, but he still carefully said, "The Fortune Gate might not be as good as the Nangong family. Master Xiaohua might as well follow the Nangong family. It was possible before, but I'm afraid it won't be possible now." Xiaohua said with a smile, "The Immortal Palace is in trouble, and Master Xiaohua's title has been confirmed. Who knows what other people will say about today's matter in the hidden Immortal Continent? The Nangong family will definitely know." That might not be the case. Sun Jian shook his head and said, "Only the master of the Two Purity Palace knows about what Master Xiaohua said. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in this world." Xiaohua said with a bitter smile, "Don't forget, there's still the Empress who isn't any worse than the Immortal Emperor. This old lady only wants to save the 9th princess. As for who she saves, she might not care." Empress. Sun Jian wanted to defend the East Sea Empress, but when he thought about it, the East Sea Empress was indeed using Xiaohua. He smiled apologetically and said, "They are elders after all. It's not good for this junior to comment." "Then don't comment." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Quickly return to the Sun Palace. Right now, there must be many immortal generals gathered in front of your palace. This can't be helped. There are ways of the world everywhere." Sun Jian's face also revealed a bitter smile. Xiaohua looked around and said with a smile, "It wasn't easy for this old man to find the Immortal Palace. Is it very difficult to leave the Immortal Palace? Now that Senior is already the lightning master of the Immortal Palace, it will be very easy to find the Immortal Palace in the future. There won't be any obstructions if you leave now. Sun Jian said respectfully, if Senior is not familiar, then this junior will send Senior out. It's better if you send me out, Xiaohua said with a smile. Let this old man walk by himself, maybe I'll even find the Flower Medicine Palace. Xiaohua's words were naturally a joke. After Sun Jian accompanied Xiaohua out of the space where the Immortal Palace was, Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and asked Wen Chu in a low voice, Fellow Immortal, when did the Maitreya Buddha betray the Thunder Temple? I don't know, I'm afraid it's about when Fellow Immortal entered the Star Moon Palace. Wen Chu shook her head. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, there must be a reason why the Maitreya Buddha betrayed the Thunder Temple. We should go and take a look. However, right now, the little Ling Long Temple in the Great Snow Mountain must be the center of attention. It's too eye-catching for us to go there now, we can only wait until later. Right now, the most important thing is to find where Xin is imprisoned with the Heaven Punishment Prison Crystal. I caused a ruckus in the Immortal Palace. It's been almost a year on the hidden Immortal Continent. I don't know if the Nangong family has gotten any more information. Let's return to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range first. Wen Chu pondered for a moment and said, since we might have to go against the Nangong family, let the Fortune Gate's disciples take action. Alright. Xiaohua agreed and said with a smile, Fellow Immortal and Diviner return to the space first. I have some gains in the Star Moon Palace, and Fellow Immortal also benefited from it. Xiaohua had already told Wen Chu about the tricolored cloud and Xianhong's law discussion. Wen Chu laughed and said, very good. This young man thanks Fellow Immortal. This young man will return to the space and listen to the heavenly Tao and karma law discussion. Xiaohua released his divine sense and looked around. Knowing that there was no one around, he shook the Kunlun mirror and put Wen Chu and Diviner away. Then he released Fu Jiwen by and the Pegasus flying chariot to bring him back to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Give a monthly vote, a recommendation vote, a gift, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4604. Along the way, Xiaohua did not hide anything and told Fu Jiwen about the Immortal Palace. Fu Jiwen was speechless, and by An's expression changed several times. Then by An lowered his head as if he was thinking about something. On the other hand, Xiaohua closed his eyes and rested as if he had a card up his sleeve. Fu Jiwen was also surprised, so he urged the Pegasus to fly towards the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. In less than a day, Xiaohua returned to the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Xian Songzi, Daoist Jingting, and the other disciples came out to welcome him. Currently, no one dared to covet the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. Within a few thousand li radius, there were Fortune Gate disciples patrolling the area. Xiaohua alighted from the flying carriage and sat on the jade chair in the Fortune Gate Palace. Below the high platform, Yuan Ye, Fu Jiwen, Wang Bianfei, Chang Yuan, Yu Zhongquan, and the other inner disciples stood to the left. Xian Songzi, Daoist Jingting, Ao Zhantian, Su Tingzi, and the other outer disciples stood to the right. Below the two rows of disciples were other Fortune Gate disciples, such as Gongshu Yisin, Gongshu Yiming, and Mo Jianli. Zhang Daoren, Zhai Xingzi, Sun Kong, and the others stood behind these disciples. As for the loyal black bear spirit, he stood in front of the group of disciples, closest to the high platform. Xiaohua sat down, raised his hand and patted the top of his head. Boom! Another 10,000 thunderbolts rushed up to the sky, enveloping the sky of the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. All the disciples bowed and saluted. Disciples greet the head elder. Their voices reverberated in the air above the Fortune Gate Palace, and the black bear spirit's voice was the loudest. Sect Master? Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, what's the reason for this? Why are you suddenly calling me Master? Master, the title of Sect Master is something that disciple discussed with by and on the way back. After discussing it with the other senior and junior brothers, everyone felt that it was appropriate. Fu Jiwen calmly walked out and bowed. There are 4 reasons for the Sect Master's words. First, there is a record in the middle treatise. The previous emperor appointed instructors, and the sect master taught the 6 virtues. This is the origin of the title of sect master. In other words, it means to be in charge of teaching. My master is my fortune gates professor, and all cultivation techniques are taught by my master. He is worthy of the title of sect master. Secondly, our fortune gate is now divided into 2 parts. The Xiao country has already been established, and junior brother Lan is the grand preceptor of the Xiao country. On the other hand, the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's fortune gate has already been established. With master as the gate chief, wouldn't his position be the same as junior brother Lan? Therefore, Shifu should appoint junior martial brother Li Xiang or junior martial brother Xiong Yi as the sect leader. Shifu should be in charge of a country or a sect, he should be the sect leader. Thirdly, now that the Dao sect has fallen, Master used his own strength to create the Dao sect. The Dao sect stood side by side with the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demon race. They were the inheritances of the human race. His master was naturally called the sect master. Fourthly, as the dragon master of the Dragon Island and the lightning master of the Immortal Palace, Master has a noble status and is worthy of the title of sect master. If you're talking about an illusion, I do know about it. But what about this great master? Xiaohua asked with interest. What kind of story is this? Hee, great master. The black bear spirit hurriedly laughed. This is what this little one said. Previously, senior martial brother Fu only said sect master, but this little one felt that sect master was not intimate enough, so it was better to call him great master. At this time, Wang Bianfei also walked out with a smile and bowed. Since Shifu is great master, then what about martial uncle Lei Ting? Martial uncle Wenxiu? Isn't it second great master or third great master? Therefore, this disciple suggested calling Shifu great master. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at his disciple and waved his hand, saying, Our Dao sect, Confucianism, Buddhism, and demons exist side by side. Naturally, we can be called a sect. But with the decline of the Dao sect in the hidden immortal mainland, although we have a certain status, compared to the real Dao sect, we are still insignificant. If this great master was heard by others, we would be mocked as a frog at the bottom of a well. Don't mention this again in the future. Fu Jiwen didn't agree with Xiaohua's opinion and said respectfully, this disciple doesn't think so. That immortal Emperor Go Chen's strength is similar to Shifu's, and Mahavarakana is also not much stronger than Shifu. Even the golden-winged Great Peng. Didn't it also lose to Shifu? They can call themselves immortal emperors, world sovereigns, and great sages, so why can't Shifu call himself great master? Moreover, only when Shifu is great master can junior martial brother Lan and junior martial brother Xiong Yi be good sect masters. Only then can we disciples spread our branches and spread our leaves. Senior Xiao. At this time, Zhai Xingzi also came out and said respectfully, Senior martial brother Fu Jiwen is right. Currently, Senior is the leader of our Dao sect, and your position determines the development of our Dao sect. Only the title of Great Master is suitable for Senior's identity. Moreover, I think that since the primordial chaos ancestor can call himself an ancestor, then Senior can naturally call himself the sect master. Only an open, upright, and broad-minded person like Senior is worthy of being the sect master of my Dao sect. Listening to everyone's words, Xiaohua inwardly pondered. Everyone's words were reasonable. Perhaps he was indifferent to fame and fortune, and didn't like these titles, but he couldn't block the path of others because of this. If he didn't elevate himself, how could Xiong Yi, Fu Jiwen, and the others have the space to display their abilities? What would others think of his fortune gate? If he didn't follow good advice, there might be a second or third Lan Prince appearing. Good. Xiaohua nodded. In that case, Shifu can also reluctantly be great master. Greetings, sect master. All the disciples were overjoyed. Just as Xiaohua was about to raise his hand to help the group of disciples up, he heard the lightning reverend call out from within the space. Hee, fellow Daoist Xiao, if you are the head elder, then am I the second head elder? Xiaohua laughed inwardly. I won't say anything about this matter. Let's hear what the disciples have to say. Good, good, good. The lightning immortal, Wen Chu, and the others cheered in the space. Good disciples. After waiting for all the disciples to stand up, Xiaohua said with a smile, "You all pushed your master to the peak of the limelight of the head elder, then how do you and the other martial uncles rank?" "Shifu, don't be impatient." Wang Bianfei was the most quick-witted and hurriedly said with a smile, "Disciples have already come to a conclusion on this matter, but Shifu, please explain to your martial uncles that you are the same as Shifu, you can also be great master. But since you are in the fortune gate, you can only have Shifu as the great master. The other martial uncles are not ranked first or last, they can only be addressed differently." "Let's hear it," Xiaohua asked with interest. Wang Bianfei respectfully said, "The Kunlun Paradise's fortune gate was first established by martial uncle Lei Ting. If Shifu is great master, then martial uncle Lei Ting is second master." Hearing this, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the Kunlun mirror flew out and landed above his head. A light pillar flickered, and the lightning immortal walked out from the Kunlun mirror. "We disciples greet the second elder of the sect." Wang Bianfei was overjoyed, and he led his fellow disciples to kneel. Zhai Xingzi and the others were confused, but when they saw another Grand Ascension Stage human cultivator walk out, they were ecstatic. "Ha, good disciples, stand up. It's good that you didn't forget this old man. This second master. This old man is very fond of you." The lightning immortal cared about his face the most, and when he heard his disciples calling him second master, leaving Wen Chu and the other clones behind, he was overjoyed. He laughed heartily as he helped his disciples up, and with a wave of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in front of each of them. The lightning immortal casually took out a jade chair and sat to Xiaohua's left. He smiled and said, "This is a pill refined by this old man, and it has nothing to do with cultivation techniques. Take it." "Many thanks, second master." All the disciples were overjoyed, and after expressing their gratitude, they accepted the pills. Xiaohua smiled and said, "You are generous." "Eyes disciples, I will naturally be generous." The lightning immortal's face was filled with joy, and he looked at his disciples with benevolence in his eyes. Fu Jiwen took another step forward and said respectfully, "Master, martial uncle Wen Chu also put in a lot of effort when building the fortune gate. He should be the third master." The Kunlun mirror shook again, and Wen Chu stepped out from the light pillar. He laughed and said, "I am the third master." Disciples greet third master. All the disciples were of the same cultivation level, but those who cultivated Confucianism were more respectful. This is the literary star that the sect master was talking about? Gusu Chiodi exclaimed when she saw Wen Chu's unfathomable cultivation. She immediately recalled Xiaohua's words. "Hee, not bad, little girl." Wen Chu laughed and said, "This old man is not only the third master of the Fortune Gate, but also the owner of the Literature Palace. When I have time, this king will personally go to the Gusu family to propose marriage as the owner of the Literature Palace." Junior thanks the third master. Gusu Chiodi was so happy that tears flowed down her cheeks. "You can all get up." Wen Chu also took out a jade chair and sat beside Xiaohua. He raised his hand and helped all the disciples up. Not to mention Gusu Chiodi, even Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Imo Jianli were pleasantly surprised. They were brought back to the soaring Dragon Mountain range after coming out from the Star Moon Palace. Although the Fortune Gate also had Confucianism disciples, these disciples' strength far surpassed the three of them. The three of them didn't know which disciple Xiaohua would find to be their master, and they were anxious every day. Today, seeing Wen Chu come out, how could they not know that this was the master that Xiaohua had found for them? How many people in this world could become the Literature Palace's master's disciple? Sure enough, Xiaohua smiled faintly and looked at the three disciples, saying, "Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Mo Jianli, quickly come and greet your master." "Yes, first master." The three of them answered and hurriedly walked out. They knelt below the high platform and respectfully said to Wen Chu, "Disciples greet master." Chapter 4605. Stand up. Wen Chu nodded. The sect master has already told me about the three of you. Master will accept you into the sect now. Fortune Gate's disciples have no taboos, except for one. Killing one's own brothers. Yes, disciple will remember. The three of them hurriedly agreed. Wen Chu continued, since there are several sect masters in our Fortune Gate, master can be considered your master. The other masters are also your masters. Not only can you ask them to teach you, but you must also treat them with the same respect as master. The three of them answered and stood to the side. After Wen Chu accepted Gongshu Isin, Gongshu Yiming, and Emo Jianli, Fu Jiwen spoke again. However, he hesitated and did not finish his sentence. This fourth master should be that martial uncle, right? That's right. Xiaohua nodded. He has boundless benevolence in his heart and is the kindest. He is qualified to be the fourth master. Venerable Master Sun Kong and the others were bewildered. They did not know what the Fortune Gate's disciples were talking about, but looking at the respectful expressions on their faces, they knew that this fourth master was a person of virtue and prestige. We greet the fourth master from afar. The black bear spirit's eyes turned, and he bowed. Fu Jiwen and the others nodded in agreement. However, before they could get up, Xiaohua's face lit up. He looked outside the Fortune Dao Palace, and sure enough, there was a strong gust of wind outside the Fortune Dao Palace. A wave of starlight energy fell like a tsunami, and a loud voice rang out, "Fuck, this saint was only delayed for a moment, and that little monk actually took the fourth master's position. Ha, fellow Daoist has returned at the right time." Since Xiaohua knew, the lightning Daoist and Wen Chu naturally knew as well. Everyone smiled as they looked outside. Swoosh! A streak of starlight flashed, and starry sky great sage Feng Wu's figure appeared on the stage. Feng Wu had just stabilized himself when he flapped his wings, and the white lion and golden condor flew out and landed beside the black bear spirit. The black bear spirit was overjoyed, and he hurriedly saluted respectfully, "Disciple greets the fifth master." Disciple greets the fifth master. Fu Jiwen and the others did not dare to delay and saluted as well. Starry sky great sage. Zhang Daoren felt a little dizzy. The demonic beast clan's #1 master, the great holy temple's #1 great saint, is the Fortune Gate's fifth old master, then. Then what about the sect master's fourth old master? Little monk. When he thought up to here, Zhang Daoren came to an understanding. However, he knew that even if he died, he wouldn't tell anyone about this understanding. Supervoid Great Sage Feng Wu glanced at the people beside Xiaohua. She swaggered over to a jade chair and sat down. She smiled and said, "Fortunately, we returned in time. Those people still haven't come out." Then, Supervoid Great Sage Feng Wu waved her hand and helped the disciples up. Immediately after, she bestowed a demon fruit to each disciple. "Fellow Daoist, why did you suddenly return to the soaring Dragon Mountain range?" Xiaohua asked with a smile when he saw Feng Wu sitting down. "You should be comprehending profundities in the Great Sage Hall right now. I heard that the Star Moon Palace had been closed. Knowing that you had returned, I specially came to take a look." Feng Wu smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist, wherever you go, you don't come empty-handed. I'm sure you've left some benefits for me, right?" Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "You have a good idea? You want to plunder I before returning to the Great Sage Hall to comprehend. The profundities in the Great Sage Hall are all at the peak of the 3 continents." Feng Wu shook her head and said, "If you want to comprehend deeper, you'll have to go deeper into the Great Sage Hall. That's a place that none of the great sages in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm have ever entered. I don't know, so I don't want to go in for the time being." Xiaohua flicked his sleeve and handed the palm-sized starfish-like object to Feng Wu. When Feng Wu saw the strange fine lines on the surface of the object and sensed layers of indescribable fluctuations between these fine lines, she couldn't help but be overjoyed. She opened her mouth and swallowed the object. She smiled and said, "This poor Daoist is relying on this object to break through the void." "Yes, there are also some secret techniques for becoming a god," Xiaohua said with some pride. Wait until we enter the space. I'll ask fellow Daoists Tian Dao and Karma to teach you these. Good. Hearing this, Feng Wu was overjoyed but also calm. She closed her eyes and sat on the jade chair, comprehending the fluctuations of the strange object. Seeing that Xiaohua was talking to Feng Wu through voice transmission and didn't say anything, all the disciples were silent. When Feng Wu closed her eyes, Chang Yuan stepped out and bowed. Martial Uncle Wu's abilities are mysterious and unfathomable. You should be the sixth elder. Good. Xiaohua nodded. He pointed at the Kunlun mirror and Daoist Wu flew out in a flash of green light. Who's this? Is he also a supreme cultivator of our human race? Gusu Chiodi was dumbfounded. She naturally didn't know Daoist Wu's strength, but when she saw Daoist Wu's gaze sweep over her, she felt that she couldn't retaliate. She already knew that Daoist Wu's strength was unfathomable. Chang Yuan led the Fortune Gate's disciples and bowed. Disciples, greet the sixth elder. Rise. Daoist Wu didn't care about the false reputation. He waved his hand and signaled the disciples to rise. He said indifferently, "It's rare that you still remember me. I thought you would put me last." Who asked you to have so few disciples to teach? Xiaohua smiled and said, "Today's ranking is all because of your disciples. I don't care, but don't forget about the other one." Daoist Wu sat down and said indifferently. Xiaohua nodded and said, "You're right. This fellow Daoist is probably the strongest. He should be the second elder." Lightning Reverend curled his lips and said, "He is strong and has many disciples. But his luck isn't good. Lu Yi Jianghong and the other dragons have all returned to the heavenly abode river." Yuanya hurriedly bowed and said, "Master, Martial Uncle Kuang should be the supreme leader, seventh elder." Before he could finish his words, an aura that made all the disciples prostrate themselves rushed out from the light pillar of the Kunlun mirror. Daoist Yun had shrunk into his human form and flew out. The oppressive aura around him rushed out uncontrollably. "I have come to lend you a hand." Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand. A lightning ring fell above Daoist Yun's head. Strands of lightning fell from the ring and blocked Daoist Yun's oppressive aura. The group of Fortune Gate disciples breathed out in relief and bowed respectfully. Disciples, greet the sect master, seventh old master. Rise. Daoist Yun's face was expressionless. He looked at Xiaohua and casually sat next to Daoist Wu. This is the dragon race. Even Ao Zhantian, who had already entered the Fortune Gate, couldn't help but roar in his heart when he felt his blood boiling uncontrollably. How many masters do we have in the Fortune Gate? Martial Uncle Yun has come out. Next should be Martial Uncle Tianren. Xian Songzi smiled and said, "He doesn't have many disciples. Senior brother Yuan Ya is one of them." "Damn it, you bunch of ungrateful things." When Tianren heard that it was his turn, he flew out from the space and cursed, "Only now did you remember me. My ranking is so much lower than that Lei Ting brat." Xian Songzi and the other disciples naturally knew Tianren's temper. They hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciples, greet the eighth elder." Rise, rise. Tianren was overjoyed, but his face was still tense. He waved his hand and said, "It's too late for you to call me. I don't have any more gifts." Chang Yuan laughed and said, "Then we'll wait for the eighth elder to be happy. We'll talk about it when I snatch that Lei Ting brat's position as the second elder." Tianren sat down beside Feng Wu and grinned. Su Tingzi was also dumbfounded. 8 masters with 9th grade origin energy, his Fortune Gate, was going to defy the heavens, right? Unfortunately, he was still wrong. Yuanya opened his mouth again and said, "Although Martial Uncle Shi is different from us, he is still a member of our Fortune Gate. Disciple thinks that he should be the 9th elder." A maniacal laugh burst out from the Kunlun mirror's light pillar. Several layers of blood-red light flew out from the Kunlun mirror's light pillar with pitch-black shadows. The demon Lord Shifei flew out and landed in front of Yuanya. He stretched out his large hand and slapped Yuanya hard. "Good boy, I was right. Your talent is excellent. In the future, you will inherit my inheritance." The task of dominating the devil world will be handed to you. Fu Jiwen and the other disciples were naturally familiar with this devil clan's martial uncle. They hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciples, greet the ninth elder." "Rise, rise." Archdevil sure smiled from ear to ear. He waved his hand and a blood-red bead appeared in front of everyone. He said, "This is soul essence. Although it's not much, it's enough to support your divine sense to increase by 10%. Thank you, ninth elder." Although the disciples bowed 9 times, they were still very happy. After Archdevil sure sat down, Xiaohua looked around and said with disappointment, "What a pity." What does fellow Daoist mean? Not only were the disciples confused, even the Thunderbolt Master and the others were confused. Xiaohua looked at the sky outside the Fortune Dao Palace and said, "My fortune gate should have a 10th elder. Unfortunately, his whereabouts are unknown. He can't reunite with us." 10th elder? The Thunderbolt Master and the others were stunned and asked curiously, "How come we don't know?" Xiaohua smiled and told them about the disappearance of the Phoenix celestial body. Back then, Xiaohua's doppelganger technique was too shallow. The doppelgangers did not have their own consciousness, so they did not know about this matter. When Feng Wu heard this, a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, this fellow Daoist should be the 8th great sage of my great sage hall." "Who knows?" Xiaohua shook his head. "I still don't know how strong he is now. However, if I'm not wrong, he should be in the light congregating realm or the enlightenment star realm. It's unlikely that he's in the sky devouring realm." Chapter 4606. Forget it. Xiaohua looked at the puzzled Fortune Gate disciples and waved his hand, saying, "Our Fortune Gate's 10th Old Master's position will be reserved for the time being. Wait for your martial uncle to return." Yes, disciples look forward to 10th Old Master's return. The group of Fortune Gate disciples bowed respectfully towards the outside. "Excellent." Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "Our Fortune Gate's 10th Old Master's position has been determined. Our Fortune Gate's glory begins today. Congratulations to the 10th Old Master. Congratulations to the 10th Old Master." Seeing that their Fortune Gate actually had 9 of the 3 mainland's supreme cultivators, all the Fortune Gate disciples were overjoyed and congratulated in unison. After the thunderous cheers subsided, Xiaohua's gaze swept over the crowd below the stage, asking, "Xianxia, how was the reception of our Fortune Gate's disciples?" Xianxia did not dare to be negligent, hurriedly bowing and answering, reporting to First Old Master. Disciple accompanied Senior Brother Jingting, Junior Brother Wang Bianfei, Junior Brother Yu Zhongquan, and Junior Sister Chang Yuan to the 3 mainlands to welcome the Star Moon Palace's Fortune Gates disciples. After 10 months and 11 days, we welcomed a total of 8,092 Gold Core Realm disciples and 3,601 Foundation Establishment Realm disciples. Among them, 37 were injured. Disciple was ordered by First Old Master to investigate the cause of their injuries. 14 of them were injured by accident, and Disciple felt that there was no need to pursue the matter. Of the remaining 23, 14 were injured in the Thousand Beasts Sacred Ground, 7 were injured in the hidden Immortal mainland, and 2 were injured in the Pure Land of Bliss. Disciple was ordered by First Old Master to kill 49 people and exterminate 85 demonic beast tribes. However, as of now, there are still 15 disciples whose whereabouts are unknown. First Old Master, please punish them. Good. Xiaohua nodded, praising, "You've done well. Our Fortune Gate's disciples should distinguish between good and evil. We can't let others bully us, but we can't bully the weak." As for those 15 disciples, Master and Xiong Yi brought them back to the Fortune Gate. Master left in a hurry that day and forgot to tell you. This is Master's fault. It's good that all disciples are fine. Xianxia finally let out a long sigh of relief, his face relaxed. "What about Ao Zhan and those dragons?" Xiaohua asked again. Yu Zhongquan hurriedly replied, "Sect Master, I saw Ao Zhan. According to them, after Senior Brother Lu Yi and Junior Sister Jiang Hong unified the Grotto Heaven River, they expanded their forces to all the rivers of the hidden Immortal continent. It seems that there was some misunderstanding with Ao Zhan's forces. He left in a hurry and didn't have the time to thank sect master. And let them be. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Jiang Hong is the princess of the Heavenly Abode River. She is the rightful ruler of the Heavenly Abode River. Ao Zhan was also a direct descendant of the dragon race, so it was natural for him to be in charge of the race. Furthermore, these two dragons were both leaders of their time and talented commanders. It would be strange if they didn't run into each other. Furthermore, from the perspective of the dragon clan, Jiang Hong's status seems to be slightly lower than Ao Zhan's. Now that Jiang Hong's power has far surpassed Ao Zhan's, how could Jiang Hong possibly submit to Ao Zhan? Master, shouldn't we remind junior sister? Fu Jiwen asked worriedly. It's necessary to remind her. Xiaohua's face gradually turned frosty as he said, but a reminder is only a reminder, not their true intentions. Master only wants to say that all of you can do whatever you think is right, even if there are some things that Master doesn't like. However, all of you must remember that you are Fortune Gate's disciples. Killing fellow disciples is no exception. The moment Xiaohua's words left his mouth, thunder rumbled, and the entire soaring Dragon Mountain range was covered in ice and snow. Disciple doesn't dare. Disciple will always remember sect master's teachings. Fu Jiwen was also shocked, and he hastily knelt down. The other disciples were even more frightened as they knelt down and answered in unison. Xiaohua closed his eyes, and a moment later, he opened them. His robe fluttered, and a dazzling light shot out from the Fortune Gate Palace. Wherever the light passed, the ice and snow melted, and flowers fluttered in the air. Rays of sunlight also fell from the sky, and it was actually spring again. The coldness on Xiaohua's face gradually disappeared, and he said, You all can stand up. All of you have done well. Master is just giving you a reminder. Yes, sect master. The group of disciples stood up again. In this short period of time, they had lost count of how many times they had knelt and stood up, but there was only respect in their hearts, and not the slightest trace of dissatisfaction. Is the Shao country's establishment going smoothly? Have those filthy people been cleaned up? Xiaohua's gaze swept over the group of disciples. Fu Jiwen hesitated slightly. After all, he was the one who had received the Grand Preceptor's lot and had his disciple deliver it to Prince Lan. However, he had followed Xiaohua to the Immortal Palace, and just as he returned, Xiaohua had been promoted to a high seat in the hall. He did not receive any report from his disciple. Fortunately, Wang Biafei hurriedly bowed and said, Master, Prince Lan's master. Junior brother received the Grand Preceptor's lot and led the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's disciples, as well as some Fortune Gate's disciples to the Shao country. Initially, there were some reports, but Master left in a hurry and did not appoint any senior brother or junior brother to be in charge of the Fortune Gate's affairs, so we did not receive any specific reports. When senior brother Xianxia and senior brother Daoist Jingting returned, they specifically asked Prince Lan to send a report on the situation this year, but it hasn't been sent back? Xiaohua asked without any surprise. Xianxia said, Indeed. Tell me the general situation. Xiaohua said indifferently. Wang Bianfei said, Junior brother Lan took the Grand Preceptor's lot and established his country in the Shao country. The citizens of the Shao country celebrated. Later, junior brother Lan mobilized the Fortune Gate's Iron Army and annihilated the dozen or so countries of Daoist and Confucian cultivators that Master had warned against. Currently, the Shao country's territory has expanded by another 20%. Wang Biafei explained the general situation he knew and concluded, the current Shao country has become the largest empire on the hidden Immortal mainland. Moreover, it's a Daoist country. Disciple heard that junior brother Lan is supervising the construction of the capital city and is preparing to invite Master to be the ruler of the country. Chang Yuan added. No need. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, the Shao country was established because of the people, and the people are the master. Appointing a ruler is the way of governing a country. Our Daoist sect emphasizes on non-interference, so there is no need for a ruler. A Shao country without a ruler? Fu Jiwen was also stunned, and then smiled bitterly. Master, what you said is the legendary ideal country. How can it be realized in this country where there are so many Confucian countries? Let's try it first. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Master has already established the country according to the Immortal Palace's rules. As for how to govern the country, there is no need for the Immortal Palace to interfere, right? That's true. Fu Jiwen smiled and said, How to govern the Shao country is Master's business. The Immortal Palace has no right to interfere. Of course, the Shi country's affairs are more like a secular country's governance. You and I have no experience. Master's opinion is only for reference. As for the specific situation, let His Highness Lan decide according to the situation. At this point, Xiao Hua transmitted his voice to Fu Jiwen. Jiwen, secretly send enough people to the state of Shi to investigate the recent. Even the situation of His Highness Lan in the past 10 years. Be careful, no one is to speak of this matter. Yes, Fu Jiwen was shocked and hurriedly agreed. Then, Xiao Hua pondered and said, As for the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate, there needs to be someone to take charge. All of you want to cultivate by yourselves, who can handle the daily affairs. Wasn't Master angry just now? Why are you fretting now? Fu Jiwen was the closest to Xiao Hua. After receiving Xiao Hua's private order, he asked with a smile. Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. Lu Yi is a good candidate, but I'm afraid he'll be easily swayed and listen to Jiang Hong. But Xiao Hua couldn't help laughing when he said this. Isn't this nonsense? Isn't Jiang Hong a Fortune Gate disciple? This matter is decided. Pass down my order, have Lu Yi return to the soaring Dragon Mountain Range and take charge of the Fortune Gate's affairs. Xiao Hua ordered. Yes, disciple will pass down the order. Fu Jiwen hurriedly agreed. There's one more thing. After dealing with the soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate's affairs, Xiao Hua thought of another matter. He stroked his chin and looked at the disciples, saying, My Fortune Gate has many disciples, but Master doesn't know much about them. Do you know which disciple has the talent to be a merchant that can surpass the Luo e-commerce union's Ingpo? Xiao Hua's words silenced everyone. Everyone looked at each other, no one dared to say anything. After all, they were all cultivators. It was enough for them to cultivate, who would care about merchant matters. Not to mention finding out whose disciple had the talent to be a merchant. Fu Jiwen pondered for a moment, then looked at the disciples on his left and asked, Why are you asking this for no reason? The Luo e-commerce union was established by Ingpo's family. It's not good for our Fortune Gate to interfere. Even if Patriarch Ingpo did something inappropriate, Master can just remind him. Why would Master covet that Luo e-commerce union for no reason? Xiao Hua snappily glared at Fu Jiwen. Perhaps only Fu Jiwen would dare to say such words. Wang Bianfei, Lu Yi, and the other disciples regarded Xiao Hua's words as the golden rule and didn't dare to disobey. Fu Jiwen laughed. Don't tell me Master wants to create another Luo e-commerce union? Someone gave Master something 100 times better than the Luo e-commerce union. Xiao Hua laughed. This old man wants to find someone to take over. Star-picking tower? Xiao Hua didn't need to say anything. Fu Jiwen and the other disciples exclaimed, Master is rich. After saying that, Fu Jiwen felt a little embarrassed and bowed. Congratulations, Master. Congratulations, Master. With the star-picking tower, our Fortune Gate is like a tiger that has grown wings. This matter must be kept a secret. Xiao Hua laughed. If others know that the star-picking tower belongs to our Fortune Gate, I'm afraid there will be trouble. Give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4607. Let's find a Confucian disciple to manage the Fortune Gate. When Chu couldn't help but suggest, Fu Jiwen's heart skipped a beat. He smiled and said, Master, as the saying goes, one should not avoid family and enemies. Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. Without waiting for Fu Jiwen to finish, he clapped his hands and said, Not bad, not bad. I forgot that there is an excellent candidate in front of me. It's her turn. When Chu nodded and said, By and is a female official of the Immortal Palace. Previously, she was in charge of the School of the Emperor Star. Managing the star-picking tower is a piece of cake for her. Moreover, she is also a female cultivator. She is the most suitable person to manage Star Moon. This king recommends by. Fu Jiwen was overjoyed. After all, Wen Chu's recommendation was completely different from his own. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, third master." "Call back in," Xiaohua ordered. A moment later, Bai In came in from outside the Fortune Gate Palace. When Xiaohua told her about Star Moon, a complicated expression appeared on Bai An's face. She knelt and said, "First master, there is no problem with this disciple managing star-picking tower. In fact, there are more suitable candidates than this disciple. However, this disciple can manage it on her behalf. When there is a chance in the future, I will hand it over." Xiao Huan naturally knew that Bai and was talking about the new princess. He nodded and said, "In that case, you can manage it first." As he spoke, Xiao Hua handed over some tokens of star-picking tower to Bai. At the same time, he also placed some transmogrification techniques in them. Fairy Xingyu had never shown her true face. With the tokens and transmogrification techniques, no one would be able to discover Fairy Xingyu's departure. In the future, when the new princess took over, she would show her true face. With the title of the Immortal Palace's 9th princess, who would dare to have any thoughts? After receiving Fairy Xingyu's tokens, Bai and looked around and stood next to Fujiwen. Xiaohua looked at the listless Bai and ordered, "Cheer up. Hurry up and take over Star-Picking Tower and find out about the Nangong family." Upon hearing the words, Nangong family, Bai and immediately woke up as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He hurriedly stepped out of the ranks and bowed to ask for the order. Disciple understands. Disciple requests sect master to allow disciple to take over right now. Approved. Xiaohua nodded. But you must be careful. Don't let anything go wrong. Don't reveal the secret. Don't worry, sect master. Tao Wu said proudly, "I was born in the Immortal Palace and have done many underhanded things. I will not be discovered by the other disciples of Zhai Xinglu. Actually, it doesn't matter even if you find out." Xiaohua said with a smile, "It's just that master doesn't want to go through so much trouble right now. Fujiwen, bring some disciples to assist Bai." "Yes, master." Fujiwen received his orders and hurriedly left the Fortune Dao Palace with Bai. Subsequently, Xiaohua asked a few more questions about the Fortune Gate before dismissing all the disciples. In the end, only Zhai Xingzi, Gusu Qiudi, Zhang Daoran, and esteemed master Sun Kong remained. Looking at the four people's respect, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Lady Gusu." "Yes, sect master." Gusu Qiudi knew what Xiaohua wanted to say. Her face was as red as a hibiscus. "Your relationship with Zhai Xingzi is stronger than gold. After going through so many twists and turns, you are still together. This old man is very envious. This old man has promised to invite Wenxing to your Gusu family to propose marriage. Today, I will invite the Confucian Immortal Master, the Scholar Palace Master, to personally go to the Gusu family. I wonder if you are satisfied." Gusu Qiudi bit her lips and nodded. "This junior thanks sect master." "Fellow Immortal Wen Chu." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Gusu Qiudi and Zhai Xingzi are this old man's good friends. I will have to trouble you with this matter." "All right." Wen Chu stood up from the jade chair and nodded. "This old man has already mentioned this matter. Leave it to this old man." "Zhai Xingzi." Xiaohua looked at the ecstatic Zhai Xingzi and said, "This old man still has matters to attend to. I will not be able to personally accompany you to the Gusu family. Zhang Daoran and esteemed master Sun Kong will go on behalf of this old man." Zhai Xingzi nodded happily and said, "This junior understands, this junior understands." "Sect master." Esteemed master Sun Kong shouted from the side, "Since you are our sect master, then, can this junior's disciple come to the soaring Dragon Mountain range?" Zhang Daoran's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had already planned to do this, but he wanted to wait for everyone to disperse before telling Xiaohua. However, he didn't expect esteemed Master Sun Kong to have already spoken. Thus, he didn't dare to delay and hurriedly said, "This junior also has the same idea." Zhai Xingzi was unwilling to be left behind and said, "Sect Master, this junior also wants to marry Qiu, her in the soaring Dragon Mountain range." "Huh, all of you are allowed." Xiaohua laughed. "You are all my good friends. How can I not allow it?" This disciple also wishes to ask Gongshu Yiming and the others to accompany this disciple back to the Gusu family. Gusu Qiudi had not returned to her family for a long time and was somewhat nervous about returning home. She couldn't help but beg again. "And sure." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Since it is a joyous occasion, it should be lively. See if there is anyone else you know in the Fortune Gate. Invite them over." "Thank you, Sect Master." Zhai Xingzi and the others were overjoyed. After expressing their gratitude, they followed Wenchu out. Not long after, everyone finished their preparations. Wenchu knew that Xiaohua still had important matters to attend to, so she simply waved her sleeves and put everyone away. With a sway of her figure, she headed in the direction of the Gusu family. Xiaohua stood up from his jade chair and looked at the empty Fortune Dao Palace. He couldn't help but smile and say, "It's just a title of sect master and some ordinary orders." When these disciples leave, this old man actually feels a little reluctant. It seems that many cultivators are infatuated with power for a reason. "Fellow Daoist, you are wrong." Daoist sorcerer said with a smile, "You are someone who likes to gather and not part. You just don't like to see people leave when the song ends. It has nothing to do with being infatuated with power." Fellow Daoist personality is a little troublesome. Reverend Yun also agreed, "It's fine now that we are all in the 3 continents, but when we leave, I'm afraid you will be sad again." "Ai, you are right." Xiaohua sighed and flew out of the Fortune Dao Palace with his clones. He said, "Days like this are getting shorter and shorter." At this moment, it was dusk again. The sky was dark, and there was no beautiful sunset. Wisps of red light rushed out from the darkness, and a layer of gloom covered the entire land like an incomparably huge net. This gloominess was like Xiaohua's mood, and it tightly bound the human race's Mahayana realm, preventing him from being free. Xiaohua flew towards the depths of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. As he flew, he transmitted his voice to his disciples, telling them not to approach casually and not to panic even if they encountered any strange phenomena. After flying for the time it took to finish a cup of tea, they were already far away from the Fortune Dao Palace. However, Xiaohua didn't stop. After releasing his divine sense, he simply said, "Fellow Daoists, I think we should stay away from the soaring Dragon Mountain range. This place is protected by the Fortune Gate's Grand Formation. If we use any divine ability, I'm afraid it will affect the Grand Formation." "That's how it should be." Daoist Wu nodded, and his clones flew out of the Grand Formation. After flying for half an hour, they saw a place with beautiful mountains and rivers. Although the night had gradually seeped in, when they looked at the place, they still felt refreshed. "This is it." Xiaohua was overjoyed. He raised his hand and pointed at the mountain in the distance. "Fellow Daoists, protect me." Normally, Archdevil Lord Shi, Heavenly Being, and Daoist Yun would be cultivating in the space. At this time, the 3 clones' expressions were solemn. They nodded like the other clones, and each of them stood still in midair. Xiaohua's figure swayed, and he landed on the mountain peak. After meditating for a moment, he formed a karmic seal with an indifferent expression. This time, the karmic seal was different from before. As soon as he formed a seal, a tide of light mixed with dark spots poured into the space between heaven and earth. Hurricane after hurricane swept up around Xiaohua, and wherever the tide of light fell, the light particles and spots were all destroyed. Strands of indescribable fluctuations were instantly generated. At the same time, hundreds of millions of laws of heaven and earth surged and pounced on Xiaohua's body. Although the area within 100 miles was covered by the storm, and Daoist Wu and his clones were slowly retreating with the storm, they could still see the light on Xiaohua's body clearly. The backlash of the laws and the accumulation of magic power lasted for 2 hours, and Daoist Wu and his clones had already flown out nearly 1,000 miles. Naturally, the area within 1,000 miles had also become the eye of the storm. Fellow Daoist Wu. Heavenly Being was puzzled, and he asked with a voice transmission, Fellow Daoist Xiao, why don't you go to the sky with such a great momentum? Won't you destroy the surrounding area if you stay here? Fellow Daoist, you don't know. Daoist Wu said with a smile, Daoist spells are most particular about the heavenly Dao, and the heavenly Dao is contained between heaven and earth. If you're in the sky, you can only detect traces of heaven and earth, but not traces of earth. Princess XNXIN is suppressed in the heaven punishment prison crystal, and it's more likely that she's trapped somewhere on the ground. Therefore, fellow Daoist Xiao can only detect this karmic seal by touching the ground with his body. Of course, fellow Daoist Zhao's karmic hand hasn't reached phenomenal mastery yet. If it reaches phenomenal mastery, there's no need for such a great momentum, and there's no need for you to touch the ground. As Daoist Wu spoke, Xiaohua's body suddenly flashed and disappeared. The area within 1,000 miles seemed to be still, and a strange fluctuation spread out with Xiaohua as the center. Wherever this fluctuation passed, everything became transparent, and all colors were wiped out. In the blink of an eye, an irregular space that was tens of thousands of miles in size was created around Daoist Wu and his clones. Swoosh! Like the faint sound of water, hundreds of millions of water filaments seeped out from the space. At the same time, the space between these water filaments began to distort. As it distorted, countless lights and shadows appeared in the air. Mountains and rivers, heavenly palaces and jade palaces, layers upon layers of torrential floods and tsunamis, and scenes of joys and sorrows flashed out. However, all the lights and shadows were only black and white, and all the lights and shadows were imprisoned in this space. Daoist Wu and his clones didn't dare to delay, and they each used their divine powers to pin down the space, and then closed their eyes to comprehend the fluctuation in the air to give it as a reward, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4608. Boom. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua's body emitted a thunderous roar, and Xiaohua's disappearing figure reappeared. At this moment, Xiaohua's figure actually refracted extremely dim 9 colors, and this figure turned into 9 phantoms. Xiaohua's figure flashed, and another hand seal was formed, but the hand seals formed by the 9 phantoms were different, and the 9 phantoms gradually turned into different karmic hands in the 9 colors. The space shook, light and shadows swirled, and the cries of gods and ghosts came from an unknown place. Strands of demonic energy, underworld energy, and even more inexplicable strangeness began to disturb Xiaohua's casting. Daoist witch, demon sovereign sure, and even celestial beings snorted coldly. As they opened their mouths, their visions turned into light and shadows, and as the interference weakened, Xiaohua's figure became more and more illusory, and the space shook more and more. The light and shadows that were scattered all over the space began to converge into the thousands of streams of water that after an unknown amount of time, the space suddenly stopped shaking, and the thousands of streams of water instantly turned into an extremely thin water thread. This water thread rushed into the 9 karmic hands and disappeared in a flash. As the water thread dissipated, everything disappeared, and countless halos of light suddenly rushed out within tens of thousands of miles of space. 111. The huge roar sounded again, and looking at the still space, it was now moving and many thick cracks appeared in the space. Scenes of light and shadows flashed before the eyes of the clones, and it was actually the situation of the space within tens of thousands of miles of space during these days. Ooh! Strange, sobbing sounds were heard, and under the feet of the clones, the earth, mountains, lakes, streams, ancient trees, and green grass appeared one by one. In the sky, the blue dome of heaven, the clouds, the sunset, the stars, and the moonlight also recovered. Among all things, Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged at the top of the mountain, also broke out of the cocoon from the 9 phantoms. In an instant, a distortion appeared around Xiaohua, and then an even more powerful energy of the laws covered the heavens and the earth as it descended. Countless halos of light blossomed from Xiaohua's body like fireworks, and it actually caused others to feel that it was unreal. Boom. Just as the avatars were about to move, a primordial spirit phantom that was over 10,000 meters long suddenly rushed out from Xiaohua's body. It madly rushed into the sky and sank into the ground. However, in the next instant, this phantom once again converged into Xiaohua's body. At the same time that the Yuan spirit phantasm fell back, a powerful suction force was born from between Xiaohua's brows. It swept across the nearby space, and like a whirlwind, all the strange phenomena fell into it. At this moment, it was another night where the moonlight was like water. The wind blew gently, the water gurgled, the mountain ridge was like a dragon, and the landscape was like a painting. As Xiaohua slowly got up, everything returned to its original state. The clones couldn't bear to disturb the painting of the night, so they slowly walked over. When they were close, Daoist sorcerer cupped his fists and said, "Congratulations, fellow Daoist, your karma technique has improved again. Thank you for your hard work, fellow Daoists." Xiaohua's eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor, and the rich brilliance of humanity gradually emerged from his eyes. Xiaohua also cupped his hands and said, "I hope that fellow Daoists have also gained something. The heavens reward the diligent. Fellow Daoists' 99 days of hard work were not in vain." The celestial being showed off his gentleness, causing Xiaohua to chuckle and reply, "Yes, fellow Daoists should go back and cultivate. Wait until I find a new one, then I'll ask for your help." Very well. Daoist sorcerers group didn't say anything else and entered their respective spaces. Immortal Emperor Go Qin is truly ruthless. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and coldly said, "He actually imprisoned his princess in such a dangerous place. No wonder why the Eastern Infernal Empress couldn't find out anything no matter how hard she tried. However, I don't know where this place is, so I'll have to ask someone else." Having said that, Xiaohua became spirited and urged his body to return to the Fortune Dao Palace. Out of Xiaohua's expectation, Wen Chu was sitting on top of the Fortune Dao Palace, accompanied by Gusu Qiudi, Gongshu Yisin, Gongshu Yiming, Mo Jianli, and other disciples. Behind these disciples were a few Confucian disciples who were sitting cross-legged while Wen Chu was explaining the 5 energy unification art. Xiaohua didn't disturb them. His figure flashed and landed on a jade chair in the middle. He didn't disturb anyone. After waiting for 2 hours, Wen Chu's lecture ended. All the disciples opened their eyes and were overjoyed. They all bowed and paid their respects to the sect master. "Lu Yi still hasn't returned?" Xiaohua frowned and asked. Gongshu Yisin respectfully said, "First Elder might not know, but the Heavenly Grotto River is not close. You ordered this disciple to fly there and then fly back with senior brother Lu. 100 days definitely won't be enough." Xiaohua nodded and asked Gusu Qiudi with a smile, "Did the Gusu clan agree?" Gusu Qiudi blushed again and said shyly, "With third elder here, outside of the Immortal Palace and the 4 great clans, which clan would dare to not give face? Thank you very much, first elder." Seeing that Gusu Qiudi was satisfied, Xiaohua didn't ask anything else. He waved his hand and a jade eye landed in front of Gusu Qiudi. "There is a dangerous place here. Take a look and see if anyone knows where it is." "Yes." Gusu Qiudi took the jade eye. Her clear eyes flashed and her face showed confusion. She thought for a moment and handed the jade eye to Gongshu Yiming and said to Xiaohua, "This disciple doesn't know." You can go and see if anyone knows. I have something to say to your master." Xiaohua nodded and ordered everyone to leave. After everyone left, Xiaohua looked at Wen Chu, and Wen Chu looked at Xiaohua. The two of them didn't speak. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Wen Chu said, "Fellow Daoist, have you made your decision?" Xiaohua was a little absent-minded. He nodded casually, but his tone was firm. Wen Chu also looked at the night sky outside the Fortune Dao Palace and said, "Everything in this world is like the night sky. There is no direction in the vast expanse. Perhaps a ray of moonlight can give you hope, but if you follow the moonlight, you might only see a dead end." Immortal Emperor Go Qin is the master of the Immortal Palace and has been in charge of it for countless years. His scheming is not something you or I can compare to. Earlier, when I heard that the Immortal Palace appointed me as the master of the Literature Star Palace, I didn't dare to believe it because Sun Jian knew very well that our relationship was not ordinary. Immortal Emperor Gochen was not afraid of this relationship and insisted that I enter the Literature Star Palace. Of course, this was because of the 5-energy origin law, but it was also because of his decisiveness and patience. Even though fellow Daoist didn't attack the Immortal Palace and only fought against the master of the 2 pure palaces at the southern heavenly gate, what was the difference between this and attacking the Cloud over Hall? Immortal Emperor Gochen actually appointed you as the Lightning Master and even asked me to help you. This kind of breadth of mind. Tieske, I can only say that Immortal Emperor Gochen is the most ambitious person in this world. Both the 4 great clans and the 100 schools of philosophers have underestimated him. That's right. Xiaohua also nodded. Of course, before this old man went to the Immortal Palace, I had already thought it through. If I couldn't find X and Xianxia's whereabouts, this old man would have definitely fought against Immortal Emperor Gochen and wouldn't hesitate to overturn the Cloud over Hall. But in reality, this old man was stunned by Immortal Emperor Gochen's words. Not only did I not find X and Xianxia's whereabouts, but I also helped him get rid of his greatest threat. Today, although this old man saw karma through the hand of karma and also knew where Xian was imprisoned, it was just as you said. This old man couldn't help but wonder if things were that simple. This old man can use karma. Mahavarakana revered world can see through the world of mortals. Immortal Emperor Gochen can also reverse yin and yang. Even that primordial chaos ancestor has a way to conceal the 5 elements, what this old man saw. How could it be completely real? But Wen Chu's face revealed a thoughtful expression and she smiled. Who knows if it is real or fake? Fake and real, real and fake. It can't hide the heart of an emperor who loves his princessa. At this point, Wen Chu paused, smacked her lips, and said, Actually, fellow Daoist already has an idea. Why ask me again? I am you are also me. What we think and know is the same. Xiaohua nodded solemnly. Doubts are doubts, action is action. I can't not take action because of some doubts. Since I can use the hand of karma to obtain information, I can't not go. Moreover, although Xian and I don't have much contact, that feeling of mutual affection is something I can't forget. She has sacrificed a lot for this, so I can't let her down. I don't understand so much about love, but since you have Xian in your heart and often think about her, then go. Wen Chu smiled and said, My fortune gate's 10 masters have all gone. Who in this world can stop them? Immortal Emperor Gochen can't stop them, Varokana can't stop them, and that golden-winged Great Peng can't stop them. At this point, several wind sounds came from outside the Fortune Dao Palace, and Gongshu Isen's excited voice came from the air. Master, Master, I know. This child. Wen Chu smiled affectionately. She's so cute. She's a piece of unpolished jade. Wen Chu looked at Xiaohua warily as if warning him, fellow Daoist has provoked Princess Xian and also Fairy Jing, this Gongshu Isen. Don't think about it anymore. Xiaohua almost spat out his saliva, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I want to ask Wen Chu Palace Master, do you know what love is? I don't know. Wen Chu honestly said, however, I see that Fairy Jing is depressed, and I'm afraid that my disciple is also like that. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, when love comes, no one can say it clearly, even Princess Xian. I didn't think too much about it that day, but when it comes to matters between men and women, I can't make the decision. While they were talking, Gongshu Isen had already rushed in, and when she saw Xiaohua, she immediately shouted, Master, this is the hidden Immortal Continent's famous day and night cliff, but the angle in Master's jade eyes is wrong. At this point, Gongshu Isen suddenly realized something, and she stuck out her tongue, took a deep breath, and said, Sect Master to give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4609. Wen Chu waved her hand and said, Don't make it hard on yourself, call me Master if you want. Daoist Xiao is like a brother to me, I won't blame you. That's good, Master. Gong Shu Isin giggled and said, Sect Master drew it from a different angle so the color is much dimmer so I couldn't tell. Morning and Night Cliff? Is it very famous in burial immortal continent? Xiaohua didn't understand and looked at the excited Gong Shu Isin. Gong Shu Exn was like a proud little hen. She raised her head and said, Of course. Even if 99% of us Confucian girls haven't been to Morning and Night Cliff, who doesn't know about it? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry and scolded, I'm not a Confucian girl, of course I don't know. Master, you must know that Magpie Bridge Immortal. Gong Shu Isin blushed. Outside the Fortune Dao Palace, Gusu Chiodi and the others flew over and obediently stood behind Gong Shu Isin. They heard Gong Shu Isin recite in a low voice. The delicate clouds play tricks, the flying stars spread hatred, the silver rivers pass on in secret. Golden wind and jade do meet, surpassing countless mortals. Tender as water, auspicious days like a dream, enduring the Magpie Bridge to return home. If two people love each other for a long time, why would they be together day and night? Hiss. Xiaohua suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. Isin, you're talking about tender as water sword? Not bad, not bad. Master is great. I didn't think you would know about the number 1 imperial artifact of Confucian. Gong Shu Isin couldn't help but clap and laugh. Xiaohua covered his mouth and laughed, thinking to himself, Fortunately, Fujiwen was sent to Star Plucking Tower by this old man. Otherwise, he would have exposed this old man's shortcomings. This is what he told me back at Jai Xing Lu. Cough cough. Xiaohua coughed. Of course I know about the 10 great imperial artifacts. While speaking, Xiaohua had already told Wen Chu the story of the 10 great imperial equipment. Wen Chu asked, What does Morning and Night Cliff have to do with the number 1 imperial artifact, tender as water sword? Of course it's related, Master, and it's very related. Gong Shu Isin blinked her big eyes, as if she didn't understand Wen Chu's words. Her eyes were filled with grievance. Master, don't you know that Li Hua Fairy fell into the Milky Way and died at the Day and Night Cliff? That's strange. Wen Chu didn't understand. Pear Blossom Immortal Palace. Didn't she kill 100,000 celestial soldiers at Southern Heavenly Gate before she was killed by the Star River Water Sword Empress? Why did she die at Morning and Night Cliff? Also, I've been here for so many years palace for many years. How could the Immortal Palace have records of something that would damage the Immortal Palace's reputation? Gong Shu Isin explained. Moreover, although Li Hua Fairy destroyed the immortal weapon in the Immortal Palace, she was still no match for Celestial Empress. After luring out the Heartless Man, Celestial Empress used the Star River to separate them. Li Hua Fairy was so angry that she cut off the Star River, causing the tender-feeling sword to turn into a star and leave. She then followed the Heartless Man to escape to the end of the Star River. In the end, the Star River flowed endlessly and separated her from the Heartless Man. That Heartless Man even broke his heart and abandoned Li Hua Fairy by the Star River, causing Li Hua Fairy's heart to die, and she fell into the Star River and died. Forget it. Xiaohua smiled. There's no need to talk too much about ancient stories. Tell me where Morning and Night Cliff is. Master, this isn't some ancient story. Gong Shu Isin defended herself. Looking at Xiaohua's uninterested expression, she curled her lips and said, You male cultivators really don't understand romance at all. Isin. Gong Shu Yiming reminded in a low voice, How can you speak to First Elder Sect Master like that? Gong Shu Isin came to her senses and hurriedly said respectfully, First Elder Sect Master, Morning and Night Cliff is in Qing Province. However, where the Star River fell, the mountains within thousands of miles collapsed and the weather changed greatly. Only Morning and Night Cliff stood there alone like a heartless pear blossom fairy. First Elder Sect Master. Seeing Gong Shu Isin sad again, Gusu Chiodi hurriedly interrupted. Senior brother Xiansong Zi seems to be from Qing Province. He definitely knows where Morning and Night Cliff is. Enough. When Chu waved his hand, You can leave now. I won't bring you there this time. Let Xiansong Zi come over. Yes, Second Elder Sect Master. Gusu Chiodi agreed without hesitation. Gong Shu Isin wanted to fight for this opportunity, so she said in a low voice, "Sect Master. This old man has important matters to attend to this time." Xiao Hua glared at her and said, "Even if you call the 11th Elder Sect Master, I won't bring you there." 11th Elder Sect Master? Gong Shu Isin was stunned, then nodded sadly and followed Gusuchuri out. Isin is only in the Gong Shu family. Xiao Hua smiled. If she was in any other small family, she would have been schemed against. "Aren't you in my fortune gate now?" Wen Chu smiled. "This old man likes such a pure disciple. But it's strange, when you brought Gong Shu Isin to the Star Moon Palace, that Gong Shu Jingyi didn't say a word. When Gong Shu Isin entered my fortune gate, the Gong Shu family's patriarch also didn't say anything. She is the Gong Shu family's most important array master. This is where the Gong Shu family's brilliance lies." Xiao Hua smiled. "Gong Shu Isin benefits from this, and it all belongs to the Gong Shu family. The Gong Shu family knows that Isin won't forget about her sect. However, if something happens to the fortune gate, and Gong Shu Isin doesn't report it to the patriarch, then she will have nothing to do with the Gong Shu family." "Understood." Wen Chu smiled. "It's no wonder that when this old man went to the Gusa family to propose marriage, the Gusa family only opened their doors after an incense stick's worth of time. I'm afraid they have been discussing inside." "That should be the case." Xiao Hua nodded. "Nowadays, every action of a family's disciple has to consider the family's benefits." Speaking of this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat as he thought of a person from a long time ago. Kai Wuxia. Wasn't Kai Wuxia a pitiful girl who sacrificed her life for her family's benefits? I wonder how she and him are doing now. Xiao Hua thought of Li Zongbao for no reason. When he thought of Li Zongbao and Kai Wuxia, Xiao Hua couldn't help but think of Fairy Hongxia. Damn it, if she knew that I attacked the Immortal Palace for another girl, would she jump into a vat of vinegar? Not long after, Xianxia arrived at the Fortune Dao Palace. When he heard that Xiao Hua wanted to go to the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, Xianxia thought for a moment and said, "Sect Master, although the Dawn and Dawn Cliff is famous, not many cultivators have been there. Not only is the origin energy there chaotic, but the space there is also very strange. Anyone who approaches the Dawn and Dawn Cliff will feel a heavy pressure, slowing down their flying speed. Even nascent soul realm cultivators can't teleport there. What's more special is that the weather there is constantly changing, and there are 4 seasons in a day. Of course, with Sect Master's methods, this trip won't be a problem. And as long as you know where it is." Xiao Hua smiled. "Pass down this old man's order, gather 300,000 Fortune Gate soldiers and follow this old man to the Dawn and Dawn Cliff." Yes, this disciple obeys. Xianxia didn't dare to delay and hurried out to pass down the order. Wen Chu smiled. "Why is fellow Daoist gathering so many soldiers? Are you guarding against Immortal Emperor Go Chen's scheme?" "As I know, Immortal Emperor Go Chen's scheme is possible, but not likely." Xiao Hua explained, "I am preparing for a rainy day to prevent encountering the Nangong family. Since I was able to find out that Princess XN was suppressed at the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, the Nangong family's Nangong Tianjiao would naturally know." But then, Xiao Hua frowned and said, "That's not right. What if Immortal Emperor Go Chen's scheme isn't the Dawn and Dawn Cliff, but the soaring Dragon Mountain Range? I will take all the disciples with me, and if he sends his troops to suppress us, it will be troublesome. Even if Immortal Emperor Go Chen doesn't come, what if the 4 great families come? Leave Tianren and Enlightened Master Yun behind." Wen Chu smiled. "Leave behind a portion of the disciples and an army of 100,000. Let's see who dares to suppress the soaring Dragon Mountain Range." Deal. Xiao Hua nodded and invited Tianren and Enlightened Master Yun out. After explaining, Enlightened Master Yun smiled and said, "I alone is enough to guard the mountain. There's no point in having another friend Tianren. You might as well bring friend Tianren with you. If Immortal Emperor Go Chen has other thoughts and sees friend Tianren, he will think that there is no one guarding our fortune gate. He will definitely send an order to attack the soaring Dragon Mountain Range. At that time, I will be here to destroy the immortal weapon and give the Immortal Palace a head-on blow." Xiaohua pondered for a moment and felt that it was reasonable. After all, enlightened Master Yun's strength surpassed Tianren and himself, and the Pango axe was an invincible divine weapon in the 3 continents. With enlightened Master Yun guarding the soaring Dragon Mountain range, he would definitely be able to hold back 10,000 enemies. Xiaohua kept Tianren into his space and flew out of the Fortune Dao Palace, leaving behind an army of 100,000 and 200,000 disciples. Then, Xiaohua only brought along Yuanya, Wang Bianfei, and the other disciples, and Xian Songzi to lead the way, and flew out of the soaring Dragon Mountain range. However, before Xiaohua could fly 100 miles, he saw a transmission talisman flying out from the soaring Dragon Mountain range and landing in front of him. Xiaohua received it and scanned it with his divine sense. Surprise appeared on his face as Wen Chu asked curiously, "Fellow Daoist, is there any new news?" "This is a message from Zhai Xinglu." Xiaohua passed the transmission talisman to Wen Chu and said, "Lao Ai and Fu Jiwen have taken over Zhai Xinglu. There is no special news about the Nangong family during this period of time. However, there is a shocking news. The sutra seeking extreme bliss is about to end. Chun Zong and his 4 disciples have already entered Yu province when Lao Ai sent the message. I'm afraid it won't be long before they arrive at the Longevity Town. Thunder Temple's Mahavarakana revered Buddha, Exquisite Temple's Maitreya revered Buddha, Immortal Palace's Immortal Emperor Gochen, Taibai Jinxing, and Thousand Demons' Sacred Territory's Golden-Winged Great Peng are also heading to the Longevity Town to observe the ceremony. To welcome the end of this grand event, and to consecrate the hidden immortal continent's first golden Buddha statue. Donate, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 4610. After reading it, Wen Chu gave the communication talisman to Xiaohua and shook his head. I'm afraid we have no fate to see such a grand scene. Let's hurry to Chaomuya. Xiaohua crushed the communication talisman and shook the Kunlun mirror again, taking Wen Chu and the other disciples into the space. Then he swept Xian Songzi with his sleeve and teleported towards Chaomuya. The soaring Dragon Mountain range was in the Yu province, and Yu province was also connected to Qing province. Therefore, it was not too far to go from the soaring Dragon Mountain range to Qing province. However, after teleporting for 10,000 li, Xiaohua's figure slowed down again. Because at this time, all the cauldrons under the 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent had been taken by Xiaohua. Without the 9 regions' cauldrons to suppress the destiny, the entire 9 regions of the hidden immortal continent was plagued by disasters. Although Xiaohua had previously sent out a large number of good seeds, and these good seeds had spread throughout the hidden immortal continent for hundreds of years, which played an extremely important role in preventing the intensification of disasters. However, the fine seeds were only a temporary solution. As long as the cauldrons were not returned to their original places, the 9 provinces would not be peaceful. Xiaohua flew for 10,000 li and saw a lot of suffering, and his heart felt heavy. Actually, when Xiaohua went to the Immortal Palace to ask Immortal Emperor Gochen, he had another plan. That was, if Immortal Emperor Gochen happily told him where the new princess was imprisoned, Xiaohua would directly rescue the new princess and then bring the cauldrons to the Immortal Palace to propose marriage. The cauldrons would be the betrothal gift. Of course, the cauldrons were the national weapons of Confucian cultivators, so Xiaohua could not directly tell by. Unfortunately, Immortal Emperor Gochen was completely stubborn and did not even say a single word, so Xiaohua did not even have the chance to mention the cauldrons. In particular, Kong Hongwu, who stole the cauldrons, was killed by Xiaohua, and Xia Xian, who coveted the cauldrons, was also killed by Immortal Emperor Gochen. Now, on the hidden immortal continent, no one knew that the cauldrons were in Xiaohua's hands. No one even knew if the cauldrons were still in their original places. Of course, Xiaohua also used the cauldrons to deal with the heavenly demon in the ruins, but Xiaohua believed that even if Sun Jian saw it, he would not think that it was the cauldrons. Forget it. Xiaohua couldn't bear it in his heart and secretly made a decision, after rescuing Xian, whether Immortal Emperor Gochen agrees or not. This Xiao will have to use the 9 prefectures' cauldrons to set up the 9 prefectures' great array. Otherwise, the people of the hidden immortal continent will eventually. However, when he thought up to here, Xiao Hua laughed bitterly. He also understood in his heart that setting up the 9-province grand formation required the 9-province formation diagrams. He didn't have the diagrams, so how could he set up the formation? If he wanted to bring the cauldrons back, he would have to find Immortal Emperor Gochen and take out the 9 provinces formation from the Overcloud Palace. However, in order to let Immortal Emperor Gochen know, he had to spend a lot of effort explaining the purpose of the cauldrons. However, a Daoist cultivator had taken the supreme national treasure of the Confucian cultivators. What did this mean? Just thinking about it gave Xiao Hua a headache. There are some things that are impossible to explain even with 100 mouths. Xiao Gua and the other Fortune Gate disciples had accumulated a lot of good seeds in Xiao Hua's space. In fact, the entire Shenhua continent's billions of people also relied on these good seeds to survive. After Xiao Hua sent out a lot of good seeds from his space, he felt slightly relieved and continued on his way to the Azure province. After a day, he saw that the land below his feet was starting to become sparse. Xiao Hua felt that the journey was about done. He stopped in midair and was about to call Xianxia out to ask for directions. However, at this time, he saw the clouds in the sky flickering. When Chu flew out from the space and said with a smile, "Fellow immortal Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows. He knew that Wen Chu had something important to say and was about to ask. Suddenly, Wen Chu was the first to stare blankly. Before he could finish his sentence, he looked strangely toward Xiao Hua's right and muttered, "How strange! Why do I feel that this place is very familiar?" Seeing the astonishment on Wen Chu's face, Xiao Hua also asked curiously, "I have never been here before. Could it be that fellow immortal has been here all these years?" No. Wen Chu shook his head and said, "I have never been here before. This is certain. However, I feel that there is a kind of aura in that place. This kind of aura to me seems to be from another world." Seems to be from another world? How is that possible? Xiao Hua laughed first. How could fellow immortal have a previous life? Oh, fellow immortal, why did you suddenly come out? This. Wen Chu said absent-mindedly, "I suddenly thought of something. Fellow immortal, aren't you very familiar with the grandmasters of the 4 great clans in Star Moon Palace? Why don't we use them?" Them? Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "They are only grandmasters. They are not Wen saints nor Wen stars. I'm afraid that they have very little power to make suggestions about the sex affairs. Moreover, if they want to speak for I or secretly tell I about the sex affairs, they have to think about how long their lives are. Under such circumstances, even if they want to say something, I don't want to hear it." At this point, Xiao Hua looked in front of his head and said, "I don't want to entangle myself with too many mundane matters with Xn. Forget it." Wen Chu reluctantly turned his head back and said, "We'll go to Chao Muya first. After we save Xn, we'll go see if there's anything strange there." With that, Wen Chu was about to enter the dimension, but Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him and said, "Fellow immortal, you don't need to go back. You're Immortal Emperor Go Chen's personal assistant. Just stay outside and accompany I." "Forget it." Wen Chu ignored him and waved his hand. "Isn't it just looking for Xn? You can go by yourself. This old man still needs to fuse with that wondrous item." With that, Wen Chu's figure actually disappeared. "AI, this group of people." Xiao Hua sighed helplessly. "When it's time to use them, not a single one is here." Then, Xiao Hua pulled Xianxia out of the dimension and asked about Chao Muya's location. When Xianxia saw it, he pointed at where Wen Chu was looking and said, "Master, that's Chao Muya. You flew in the wrong direction." "What?" Xiao Hua was stunned and felt that it was a bit unbelievable. He looked at Xianxia and then to the right. "Are you sure?" "This disciple is sure." Xianxia nodded. "This disciple flew past here before." "Wait a moment." Xiao Hua waved his Daoist robe and took out the Kunlun mirror. Then he pointed at it, and under the pillar of light, Wen Chu was pulled out by Xiao Hua with an impatient expression. "Fellow Daoist, is there anything else?" Wen Chu asked. Xiao Hua also pointed in annoyance. Look carefully. The place you said was somewhat familiar is where Chao Muya is. Could it be that you were the pear blossom fairy in your previous life? At this point, Xiaohua smiled and asked Xianxia, "That's right, who's that noble from the Immortal Palace?" Xianxia thought for a moment and said embarrassedly, "Master, that's a beautiful legend passed down by Confucian female cultivators. How would this disciple know? Either way, his surname is Sun." "Nonsense, this master also knows his surname is Sun. His surname can't be Xiao." Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, "Perhaps your martial aunt Wen Chu is this Sun's reincarnation in this life." This time, Xianxia hurriedly said, "Master, I don't think it's possible. It seems that this so-called number 1 imperial artifact didn't exist in the ancient times. It should have existed not long ago. Perhaps that noble is still living in the Immortal Palace." "Ha!" Xiaohua immediately clapped his hands and laughed. "No need to say any more, no need to say any more. It must be that immortal Emperor Gaochen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the Heaven's Punishment Prison crystal at Chao Muya. Moreover, if it wasn't for him, why would the Empress keep such a close eye on him? Why would he insist on running to that flower medicine palace?" Xianxia also smiled and said, "This disciple doesn't know." Xiaohua joked with Xianxia, but his divine sense scanned the surrounding 10,000 li to see if there were any traces of the Nangong family. Unfortunately, his joke of covering for her was in vain. There was no cultivator above the 6th level of essence force nearby. Wen Chu, after hearing Xiaohua's words, looked at the distant horizon and narrowed her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. Since they knew that Chao Muya was in front of them and no Nangong family disciples were coming over, Xiaohua put Xianxia into his space and urged Wen Chu, "Let's go." Wen Chu nodded and turned into a cloud as she rushed towards Chao Muya. They flew for another 4 hours, and the sky was covered in a layer of faint gray. This layer of gray was tens of thousands of li wide, and Xiaohua already knew that this was Chao Muya. Xiaohua stopped and turned to look at Wen Chu, whose eyes were flashing with 5 colors, and said in a low voice, "Fellow Immortal, we are still some distance away from Chao Muya, but the heaven-earth yuan qi and righteous qi in the air have already become chaotic, and there are also traces of the power of the moon and stars. It seems that Chao Muya is not simple." Unexpectedly, Wen Chu didn't answer his question. "That's right, it's here." This old man feels a kind of sorrow, a kind of helplessness, a kind of reluctance, a kind of parting. "That's strange." Xiaohua stroked his chin and said, "Didn't fellow Immortal not have so many feelings before? How come you've just merged with that wondrous item, and you've already undergone such a transformation?" Wen Chu shook her head. "These feelings are not mine, I know it very well." "They're not yours?" Xiaohua was even more confused. "If they're not yours, how do you know?" This old man doesn't know either. Wen Chu was also confused. "I'm afraid we'll only know when we get there." "All right." Xiaohua urged his body to move. "We'll go take a look. However, it's best to be careful." Although they were both Mahayana realm cultivators of the 3 continents, Xiaohua and Wen Chu still had to be extra careful. They both used their divine abilities and slowly approached the gray layer. After flying for a while, not only were there some cracks in space that would occasionally sway, but they would quickly heal and tear apart. It was as if space was extremely unstable. However, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the space, he could clearly see that this space seemed to be divided into several layers. The outermost layer was like a piece of cotton fluttering in the wind, extremely tattered, while the inner layer was tough and intact. Give it a tip, and thank you for all your support. Chapter 46:11. In the beginning, although there were no traces of people on the ground below Xiaohua and Wen Chu, the undulating mountain ridge and continuous forest were still somewhat lively. However, the closer they got to the light gray area, not only did the mountain ridge disappear, even the hills became increasingly low and disappeared, not to mention the forest. The entire ground began to have some bumpy undulations. These undulations were either dense or sparse. Looking from the sky, the entire ground actually looked like a sieve. The two people's figures gradually sank into the light gray area, but the space around them was not particularly different. It was just that there were more fragments in that space, and from time to time, the two people's bodies would explode. If it was an ordinary cultivator, it would naturally be difficult to resist. Perhaps they would not be injured, but no matter what, they would still have to use their divine abilities to resist. Xiaohua and Wenchu acted as if they did not see it. They still released their divine senses to explore the surroundings. Woo! The wind was still whimpering, like a woman sobbing. Xiaohua did not feel anything, but Wenchu frowned and unexpectedly stopped. What's wrong? Although Xiaohua really hoped that Wenchu and the other clones had their own emotions, he was also afraid that their emotions would go astray. Seeing that Wenchu suddenly had some reaction, his heart unconsciously tightened, and he asked in a low voice. Wenchu covered her chest with a painful expression and replied, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, have you heard of this poem before? Old fragrant powder is like the past, love and hate cannot compare. A few lines of calligraphy in the spring, even more sparse in the autumn. The phoenix is cold, the pillow is lonely. The bowels of sorrow serve wine. Even if the soul of a dream is empty, how can it compare to the dream of no?" Xiaohua was somewhat speechless, but he very carefully nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist, could it be that you have forgotten? The books that you have read, aren't they also the books that I have read? Moreover, I still remember searching and seeking, cold and cheerless, miserable and sorrowful. When the warmth returns to the cold, it is the most difficult to reconcile. How can 2 or 3 cups of light wine be compared to him? The evening wind is anxious. The wild goose passes by, grieving, but old acquaintances. Yellow flowers pile up all over the ground. Haggard and withered, who can take care of it now? Guarding the window, alone, how can it be dark? The wutong is drizzling until dusk, little by little. This time, how can the word, worry, be enough? That's right. Wenchu clutched her chest and nodded. This is also my favorite poem. Previously, I had always recited it, and I remembered every single word clearly. However, I never understood the emotions behind it. However, when I see Xiaomuya today, I feel as if I've awoken from my stupor, and I feel a pain in my heart. It's as if my heart is being torn apart. Damn it. Xiaohua was a little angry now. I was wondering why Immortal Emperor Gochen let you out so easily. Could it be that he saw through something and did something to Xiaomuya? Perhaps. Wenchu shook his head slightly, confusion appearing in his eyes as he spoke in a low voice. Xiaohua was conflicted. He wanted to save Xn, but he was also afraid that Wenchu would encounter something fatal here. After all, he could feel Wenchu's heartache. It could be said that this was Wenchu's own feelings. To Xiaohua, this was somewhat unreconciled. He was like a kite in the sky. At this moment, someone wanted to cut the string in Xiaohua's hand and let the kite fly by itself. Xiaohua hoped for this outcome, but he did not like the feeling of not being in control. How about? Xiaohua probed. I will first send you back to Shenhua continent? Wenchu bit his lips. How could he still be the Wenchu palace master? He thought for a moment, then looked at Xiaohua. Fellow Immortal, I came from you. We are of the same origin. Right now, my heart is in a mess, and I don't know what to do. Why don't you make the decision? Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror. However, as soon as he shook the mirror, he thought of something and asked, Fellow Immortal, do you remember Buddha Bodhi's choice on the primeval continent? Of course. Wenchu nodded slightly. His eyes flashed with a hint of light as if he had thought of something. Xiaohua also seemed to have made a decision. The Kunlun mirror did not emit a beam of light. Instead, he asked, humans must experience pain. The first birth of a fetus, the mother's pregnancy, and the pain of childbirth. There are all kinds of things in the mortal world, and many of them are disasters and pain. Fellow Immortal, you are now the Wenchu star. You are luckier than most people, and even more so than I. To be a human, you must not only have intelligence, physical body, and essence, but also emotions. These emotions. If they were I, then you would not be Wenchu, But Xiaohua, now, I'm afraid it's time for you to truly become a human. Some pain is normal. Without these pains, how will you be reborn? At this point, Xiaohua said very solemnly, so, it's better to leave this decision to fellow Immortal. I understand. Wen Chu clutched his chest and nodded. I may not have Buddha Bodhi's wisdom, but I have Wen Chu's saint's finishing touch. I also have to face the test of heaven and earth. Let's go. With that, Wen Chu moved and headed towards Chao Muya. Seeing Wen Chu's back, Xiaohua felt gratified. He put away the Kunlun mirror, swept it with his divine sense, and chased after Wen Chu. He knew that today was important to him, but to Wen Chu, it was even more important. After flying for another 100 or so miles, the light gray space gradually shone with light again. However, this light contained a kind of gloomy darkness. When it landed in the light gray space, it seemed very decadent. A feeling of time passing by involuntarily arose in Xiaohua's heart. Looking at the ground, there were even more deep holes. The dark light fell into them like pitch-black eyes without eyeballs, revealing a powerless expression. Oh! Xiaohua's eyes looked around. At this moment his eyes narrowed, and he looked into the distance. In his divine sense, there was a cliff 10,000 miles away. Furthermore, when his divine sense reached the cliff, it was blocked. Needless to say, it was Chao Muya. Since Xiaohua had discovered Chao Muya, how could Wen Chu not know? However, his reaction was different from Xiaohua's. He continued to look forward, ignoring his surroundings. After discovering Chao Muya, the space started to change. Large pieces of space started to shatter. Wherever Xiaohua's divine sense went, the entire space became like a beehive. The worldly energy and righteous energy became even thinner. When the air blew in this beehive, strange sounds came out. This sound directly penetrated the soul. Even people as strong as Xiaohua and Wen Chu were not used to it. No wonder Gongshu Exen was so interested in the legend of tenderness like water but didn't dare to come here. Most of the female cultivators on the hidden immortal continent probably don't have the strength to come to Chao Muya. Xiaohua thought to himself, Immortal Emperor Gochen is truly a scheming person. No one would have thought that he would place the Heaven's Punishment Prison crystal here. Xiaohua saw 1,000 zhang tall cliff appear in the distance. This cliff appeared very abruptly on this bumpy ground. Xiaohua heard the sound of wind howling like a tsunami coming from the top of the cliff. Then he saw a layer of light cover the top of the cliff. Outside the cliff, where Xiaohua's divine sense couldn't penetrate, a light like the first rays of the morning sun slowly rose. Chao Muya. Xiaohua clapped his hands and laughed. It really is Chao Muya on the cliff. This Xiao understands now. Correct. Wen Chu also understood and nodded. This side of the cliff is gloomy and makes one's heart heavy. However, on the other side of the cliff is a fresh morning light. This is where hope lies. Chao Muya's name really lives up to its name. Unfortunately, the mysteries of heaven and earth were actually something that humans could guess. Without waiting for the two supreme cultivators of the 3 continents to finish speaking, the morning light actually crossed over the cliff and landed on this side of the cliff like the rising sun. The morning light quickly covered the space where Xiaohua came from, and the previous light gray color actually turned into a sky blue color. An indescribable joy appeared in Xiaohua and Wen Chu's hearts. Xiaohua was a bit dumbfounded, because where the morning light passed, the other side of the cliff was covered by a light gray color again. Chao Muya? Chao Muya. Xiaohua whispered. Could it be? It should be good. Wen Chu sighed and said, Confucian cultivators have a saying, recently, books have come, only small talk, no words to say. Thus, I recognized it, listened to it, and planned to take the words lightly. See Lantai Song Yu, multi-talented, good at writing. Try and ask Chao Chao Muya. Where do the clouds go? Chao Chao Muya is indeed long, but Chao Chao Muya is also fickle, more fleeting than the clouds. If I'm not wrong, this cliff should have 2 cliffs. One is Chao Muya, and the other is Chao Muya. The morning light and dusk light constantly change between these 2 cliffs? It can't be. Xiaohua was a bit dumbfounded. He urged his body to rush up the cliff in the distance. When he stood still on the cliff, an inconceivable feeling appeared out of nowhere. Sure enough, just 1,000 miles away, there was also a tall cliff on the same level as the one Xiaohua was standing on. On that cliff, there was also a tall cultivator looking at Xiaohua. It was very strange. Although the two cliffs were 1,000 miles apart, when Xiaohua looked at that person, it was as if he was right in front of him. Even the shock in that person's eyes could be seen clearly. However, Xiaohua only glanced at that person for a moment before looking down at the bottom of the cliff. Even more unexpected to Xiaohua was that the bottom of the cliff was not the ground full of potholes, but a surging sea of clouds. Above the sea of clouds, thousands of layers of clouds rippled, covered by a myriad of colors. It was also different from the light gray and blue of Chaomuya. However, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it, he was stunned again. Because even with his divine sense, when it entered the sea of clouds, he could not see the end of it. It was as if the sea of clouds was boundless. Xiaohua, Master Xiaolei? Master of the Scholar Palace? The person from 1,000 miles away asked. Although his voice was soft, Xiaohua could hear it clearly. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at that person. He cupped his hands and said, "That's right. It's the Xiao. May I know who fellow immortal is in the Nangong family?" Chapter 46:12. When that person saw that it was indeed Xiaohua, he didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly returned the greeting. "I am Nangong Yaji, greetings Master Xiaohua. Nangong Pingping is my son and he has returned to my Nangong family. He will remember Master Xiaohua's help and I will thank Master Xiaohua on his behalf." Seeing that Nangong Yaji was so polite, Xiaohua felt embarrassed and waved his hand with a smile. "This matter is already in the past. There is no need to mention it again. Is Nangong Tianji here?" Hearing Xiaohua mention Nangong Tianji, Nangong Yaji was stunned and a look of disbelief appeared in his eyes. However, this look of surprise disappeared in a flash and a kind of understanding appeared. He pondered for a moment and said, "Master Xiaohua, there is something you don't know. Not only is my family's master here, even my family's prince is also here." Nangong Yaji's words naturally had a double meaning. Hearing this, Xiaohua nodded and said, "It's good that you understand. I'm also here for the same matter." "Sigh, I understand." Nangong Yaji sighed and cupped his hands. "Senior, please wait for a moment. I will invite my family's master to seat it." However, there was no need for Nangong Yaji to turn around. A slightly aged voice sounded from behind him. An old man in his 50s walked out from the light gray twilight. He looked at Xiaohua and said proudly, "Spiritual Master Xiao shouldn't have come." Xiaohua already knew that this person was the Nangong family's master, Nangong Tianji, from the words Daoist Xiao and not Master Xiao. Xiaohua looked indifferently at Nangong Tianji who didn't greet him and asked, "This sentence should be said by me, right?" Nangong Tianji harumphed coldly, "I've been wondering what kind of question you're going to ask the Gaochen when you came to the Immortal Palace and destroyed the South Heaven Gate, forcing the master of the Two Pureness Palace and the Gaochen to intervene. However, the Nangong family, even the 4 great families and the 100 schools of thought on the hidden immortal continent guessed many answers. However, no one expected that you wanted to ask about the whereabouts of the 9th princess." "You should be honored," Xiaohua said with a smile. "You are the first to know." Nangong Tianji stood there like a mountain. It was as if he had merged with Chaomuya as he naturally exuded a domineering aura. He turned a deaf ear to Xiaohua's reply and continued, "Since you know that my Nangong family is looking for the whereabouts of the 9th princess, you shouldn't have interfered. Or perhaps, you should have informed this old man beforehand. After all, the Nangong family is in the light while you are in the dark. Now, you and I have both fallen into Gaochen's trap. Not only you, but even my Nangong family is in a dilemma." Xiaohua was also standing on the Day cliff. His figure was like a gentle breeze, and under the bright light of dawn, he exuded an indescribable aura of confidence. Even his words were filled with the light of dawn. Did I tell you that the Nangong family wouldn't come to the Day and Day Cliff? Even if we know that Morning Moo Cliff is part of the Gaochen scheme, X and Xian is right there. Will your Nangong family give up? I won't. Nangong Tianji replied firmly, but this old man can at least persuade you not to come. Where Xian is. Even if there are thousands of soldiers and horses, even if there are mountains of blades and seas of flames. I'm not afraid. Xiaohua also said firmly. Damn it. Nangong Tianji didn't need to say anything. Nangong Jingyin had already charged out from behind him. Her resolute face was now somewhat twisted as she roared furiously, Xiaohua, do you know how much I love the 9th princess? As a level 9 Grand Ascension Stage senior, you actually dare to fight with me over the 9th princess. How do you want me to face the mouths of the people in the world? Sighed. Xiaohua also sighed. Looking at Nangong Jingyin, he thought of the fire Qilin in Ardent Fire Mountain. He raised his hand and pointed at Nangong Jing. Nangong Jing, don't put on an act in front of this Xiao. Xnxn is only the 9th princess in your heart, not Xnxit. You are only marrying Xnxn for your position in the Immortal Palace and for the benefit of your Nangong family. Your so-called love is probably just your own wishful thinking. Speaking up to here, Xiaohua looked at Nangong Tianji and smiled. Since you can see that this is Immortal Emperor Go Chen's scheme, and you don't want to fight to the death with this Xiao and let Immortal Emperor Go Chen reap the benefits. How about this? You and I work together and find the Heaven Punishment Prison Crystal that is imprisoning Xn. After we break it and save Xn, we will see her choice. If she goes with Nangong Jingyin, then this Xiao will leave immediately. If Xn chooses this Xiao, then the Nangong family will leave immediately. This way, neither of our families will suffer any losses. The 9th princess must go with my Nangong family. Nangong Tianji said plainly, this matter has already been decided that day in Lingyun Palace. Xiaohua's tone became even more indifferent. Nangong Tianji, you are wrong. Xn must go with this Xiao. Before Lingyun Palace, before she was imprisoned in the Heaven Punishment Prison Crystal, her heart was already in this Xiao's heart. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Nangong Jingyin's face flushed red. He had calculated everything, but he missed out on Xnxian's heart. Right now, he was in a dilemma. If the Nangong family was defeated by Xiaohua's fortune gate, then the Nangong family's face would fall to the ground. But even if the Nangong family defeated Xiaohua and he married the 9th princess, would that 9th princess still be the 9th princess in his heart? Although he still cared about the 9th princess's identity, as a man, how could he allow such feelings to exist in this world? Nangong Jingyin. Xiaohua sneered, looking at your appearance, this old man wants to pity you. Unfortunately, a pitiful person must have a hateful side. If you didn't take advantage of the situation and wanted to destroy Xian's happiness, how could you have fallen to such a state? Daoist Xiao. Nangong Tianji's tone was still arrogant, but there was a hint of euphemism in it. You are a Grand Ascension Stage Daoist. You must have seen through the myriad emotions of the mortal world. The so-called love between a man and a woman is nothing more than two hearts. Daoist Xiao must have met a lot of female cultivators in his life. I'm sure you have experienced a lot of such things. Why should you care about the 9th princess? If you think that the 9th princess is a little interesting, there are other princesses other than the 9th princess. Why do you want to compete with my Nangong family? Or, if you are willing, this old man also has a beautiful descendant. As long as you like her, this old man can betroth her to you as a concubine. Moreover, with Daoist Zhao's current cultivation, it won't be long before you ascend. If you ascend, what will happen to the 9th princess? You covet the happiness of the past few decades and delay the 9th princess's future happiness. From what this old man can see, you are the one who will destroy the 9th princess's happiness. Don't young people have a saying that if there is a kind of love, it is called letting go? Why can't you let go? Xiaohua smiled in the face of Nangong Tianji's earnest persuasion. He rubbed his nose and said, you must be a romantic person when you were young. Who knows how many women you have said these words to? If there was someone who didn't know, they would be moved by your heartfelt words. However, this Xiao finds it funny. This Xiao and Xen have true feelings for each other. Why must this Xiao let go for the sake of true feelings? Your Nangong family is sacrificing Xian's happiness for your own benefits. You are the despicable ones. Yet you are accusing me of this. This is the biggest joke in the world. Xiao Hua. Seeing that his persuasion was fruitless, Nangong Tianji's expression changed and he asked, "Do you really want to fight with my Nangong family? Don't think that you can block my attack just because you are a Daoist Grand Ascension stage expert and have the Scholar Palace's master by your side. Don't think that you have the strength to sweep across the hidden immortal continent just because you have the Fortune Gates army. Let me tell you honestly, the four great families are far from what you know. The four great families that you see are only the four great families that we want you to see. Even if you have the strength to wreak havoc in the Immortal Palace, even if you have the ability to kill demonic realm experts, you are definitely not my Nangong family's opponent." Nangong Tianji looked up at the sky and said proudly, "The so-called Immortal Palace is just an empty name. The Sun family is the representative of the 100 schools of thought. They can't represent the four great families. We are only following the agreement of the ancient war to allow the Sun family to enter the Immortal Palace." Ha! Xiao Hua laughed and pointed at Nangong Tianji. "Nangong Tianji, you are really boasting all the way to the southern heavenly gate. Aren't you afraid of being stabbed by Sun Jian's three-pointed, double-edged blade? If your Nangong family is so powerful, why are you fighting with me over Xen? Furthermore, Nangong Ping and the others know that I know the 5 energies unifications. You also know that the Scholar Palace's master is my good friend. I don't believe that you didn't connect this matter with Xen losing the heaven's will. I don't believe that you can't guess what I asked Immortal Emperor Gaochen when I went to the Immortal Palace. You're wasting your breath on this Xiao, trying to make this Xiao feel guilty. Isn't that just showing that you're afraid of this Xiao? Nangong Tianji, don't you know that there's a saying among Confucian cultivators, 300 taels of silver here? At this point, a meaningful smile appeared on Xiao Hua's face, and he continued, "Isn't your goal the 5 Qis unification technique? Why do you want to be a prostitute and set up a monument for your chastity?" Facing the Nangong family who wanted to snatch Xianxia, Xiao Hua's tone was exceptionally vicious. When Nangong Tianji heard this, a hideous smile appeared on his face. "Hee, Xiao Hua, since you know about it, why are you still doubting the strength of the Nangong family? If it weren't for the 5 Qis unification technique, how could this old man go to the Immortal Palace to propose marriage?" Chapter 46:13. Xiao Hua sneered, "Don't make yourself sound so far-sighted. At that time, Immortal Emperor Gaochen didn't have the 5 Qi unification art yet. If you knew it was in my hands, you wouldn't have let Nangong Jingyin go to the Hall of Fragrance. Instead, you would have let Nangong Jingyin throw herself at me. After you flattered Immortal Emperor Gaochen and found out that the 5 Qi unification art was in Mai and Wenchu's hands, you realized that you had fallen into Immortal Emperor Gaochen's trap and planned to ambush me and Wenchu to get the 5 Qi unification art. And if I'm not wrong, the Dongfang family, Shimin family, and Baiming family will all appear, right?" As soon as Xiao Hua's voice faded, an even more imposing figure appeared beside Nangong Tianji. This person was over 10 meters tall, his hair was completely white, and when he opened and closed his eyes, his gaze was different from ordinary people's. In his eyes, a faint golden light was flowing, just like 2 suns. That person looked at Xiao Hua with a face as bright as a full moon and said with a dignified voice, "Xiao Hua, this old man has underestimated you." Xiao Hua looked at the newcomer and sighed, "Dongfang Qiong Hao, this Xiao overestimated you. That day in Xinyue Palace, this Xiao already told Dongfang Yushan clearly. I didn't think that you would still come. Yushan and the others are only disciples of my Dongfang family." Dongfang Qiong Hao smiled and replied, "Just as Brother Tianji said, what they know is only a drop in the ocean of our 4 great families. The message that you wanted to convey to this old man through Yushan, This old man has already received it, but don't you think that your little tricks are really unpresentable? Don't you all agree? Ah, of course. Following Dongfang Qionghao's voice, two more figures appeared on the other side of the cliff. On the left side, a tall and thin old man wearing a lake blue sword robe, who was even taller than Xiaohua by a head, stood out. This old man had a long and narrow face and a pair of silver white eyes. When his eyes moved, a faint moonlight flowed. Wasn't this the patriarch of Shimen clan, Shimen Jianzhong? On the other side of him, a plump middle-aged man dressed in a royal blue scholarly robe stood out. Although this man's face was big, his eyebrows were slightly smaller, giving him a delicate and pretty look. What was special was that this middle-aged man's arms were slightly longer, and the index fingers on his hands were even more slender. Wasn't this the Baiming family's clan head, Baiming Chouqing? That's right. I didn't think that a grand ascension stage being like him would be able to see so far ahead. Baiming Chouqing's voice was rather shrill. Similarly, Nangong Tianji did not speak for a long time. When the other three patriarchs stood still, he sighed again and asked, "Xiaohua, could it be that you saw through this from the start? If that's the case, you're even more terrifying than the Grand Mist ancestor. How could Xiaohua have thought so much before?" However, when he saw how scheming Nangong Tianji was, he went along with what Nangong Tianji said. When he heard Nangong Tianji's sigh and the appearance of the three family heads, he was even more moved. He smiled and said, "There are only a few ordinary people in the world who can become saints. No one is smarter than anyone else. The only thing that you and I have more than others is that we have more information." Xiaohua did not admit it, nor did he deny it. This allowed Nangong Tianji to confirm his judgment. He looked at Xiaohua and probed, "So you're saying that you're already prepared to face the four patriarchs?" Xiaohua rubbed his nose and revealed a mysterious smile. He replied, "I believe that I've already done it. However, whether or not I can block it depends on the strength of the four patriarchs. Of course, if you want to give it a try, you can give the order now. And, if you've already made plans, you can also give the order to attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range and Shao Country." "You're thinking too much," Dongfang Qiongghao sneered. "The goal of the four patriarchs is the five Qis unification, not the Dao sex. The Shao Country and Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Fortune Gate are things that the Immortal Palace, 100 schools of philosophers, and even Vairocana Buddha should consider. It has nothing to do with the four patriarchs. However, you have to be careful. Who knows, the Immortal Palace might have already sent their immortal army to attack the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range. When you're defeated here and run back in panic, there will be no more lair for you to lick your wounds." After probing the situation, Xiaohua was relieved. He smiled and said, "If the Immortal Palace attacks, that would be the best. First, this Xiao's plan will not be in vain. Second, this Xiao will have a falling out with the Immortal Palace. Xiaohua, you actually still have hope for that bastard Gaochen." Shimen Jianzhong couldn't help but persuade him again. "Could it be that you didn't know why he sent the master of the Wenchu Palace to your side?" See, when Shimen Jianzhong said that, Xiaohua couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't think that the four patriarchs would make a move. Naturally, he didn't think that Immortal Emperor Gaochen would send Wenchu to help him. He and Wenchu naively thought that Immortal Emperor Gaochen was thinking for Xen. However, now it seemed that Immortal Emperor Gaochen was sitting high up and had foresight. He sent Wenchu to the hidden immortal continent to help him. He might have wanted to kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. Damn it. Xiaohua cursed in his mind. However, he didn't admit it and simply said, "Gaochen's thoughts are his business. Fellow immortal Wenchu is my good friend. If I want to face the four patriarchs, he will definitely help." Dongfang Qiongghao smiled and said, "Daoist Xiao, the title of Lightning Master might not be comparable to the title of Dragon Master. The title of the Wenchu Palace Master can't buy someone's life. The four of us have been waiting for you for many days. Now that Brother Tianji has said so much, it's only to let you know the true colors of Gaochen. The Wenchu Palace Master gave him the 5 energy origin method, a pearl thrown into darkness. Ever since he stood on the sunset cliff, Wen Chu's mind was no longer on the cliff. Instead, he looked up at the sky. His eyes were filled with confusion, sadness, sorrow, joy, and melancholy. All kinds of thoughts and emotions were born and extinguished like the wind and clouds. Since Wen Chu was like this, Xiaohua was even more careful. He had said so much to Nangong Tianji, and at the same time, he was also stalling for time for Wen Chu. He was very clear in his heart that it was already the crucial moment for Wen Chu to break out of his cocoon and be reborn. If Wen Chu missed this opportunity, who knew when he would truly become an adult? However, Xiaohua smiled wryly because Dongfang Qianghao and the others were staring at Wen Chu. They clearly knew that Wen Chu had the 5-energy origin method. Even though Wen Chu ignored Dongfang Qianghao's words were meant for Wen Chu. Xiaohua had no choice but to continue. This Xiao understands what you mean, and this Xiao has already told Nangong Tianji that the 5 Qis unification technique is here. As long as you and the other family heads of the 4 great families send out a document and hand it over to this Xiao after finding the Heaven's Punishment Prison Crystal, this Xiao will definitely hand over the 5 Qis unification technique to you. That way, we can solve this problem without bloodshed and won't fall into Immortal Emperor Gaochun's trap. After he finished speaking, Xiaohua stood with his hands behind his back and gazed at the sky just like Wen Chu. At this moment, the light of dawn that enveloped the cliff Xiaohua was on started to change again, and it flashed towards the cliff the 4 great clans were on. After Xiaohua and Wen Chu, the light gray twilight slowly rose again. As Xiaohua had expected, the 4 families' patriarchs also stood firm like boulders on the mountain cliff. They didn't discuss this through voice transmission. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Dongfang Qianghao spoke. Xiaohua, you've just taken over the fortune gate, so you don't know the hardships of our 4 families. That's why you're offering such conditions. Do you think that our 4 clans have been able to stand on the hidden immortal continent for so many years because of the so-called Confucian secret arts? Xiaohua withdrew his gaze and looked at Dongfang Qianghao. I know. The so-called face is more important than the 5-energy origin method in your eyes. I know that you won't agree, and Immortal Emperor Gaochun also knows that you won't agree. In my eyes, Xinxin's freedom, Xinxin's happiness, and love for Xinxin are all more important than the 5 Qis unification technique. You 4 clans know this, and Immortal Emperor Gaochun also knows this. Therefore, Dongfang Qianghao nodded and solemnly said, even if we know that this is Immortal Emperor Gaochun's plan and he knows that we will see through it, we still have to take action. This is fate. When the Nangong family proposed the marriage, this ending was already planted. Xiaohua nodded and said, I have already said this before. Shimin Jianzhong laughed and said loudly, you have said this before, but at that time, you only said it to Brother Tianji, not to the 4 clans. This old man is very interested. Xiaohua, even if you have more than 200,000 Fortune Gate soldiers, as well as the Scholar Palace's master and other 9th grade Origin Qi realm cultivators helping you, why do you think you can withstand the combined might of our 4 families? This is something that even the Immortal Palace can't do, just based on the so-called love in your heart? Xiaohua had been paying attention to Wen Chu. At this time, the emotions in Wen Chu's eyes had begun to stabilize. Although these emotions still seemed a bit erratic and there was still some distance between them and the final moment, after hearing Shimin Jianzhong's words, Xiaohua knew that he had no chance to delay any longer. He smiled and took out the Kunlun mirror, saying, love is the sun in the sky, sprinkling the sunlight down. Strength is the earth, carrying the sunlight, turning the beauty in the light into the world of mortals. Chapter 46:14. Brother Qianghao, take back your luck. Baiming Cui Qing, who had been silent all this while, finally opened her mouth. She sneered, I've said it before, a man trapped by love is a stupid donkey. If he doesn't put up a wall, he won't turn back. Your so-called not to fight if you can, is not tenable at all. Dongfang Qianghao glared at Baiming Cui Qing and said, in today's battle, the Fortune Gate will be destroyed, and our 4 families will also suffer heavy losses. Not only will the Immortal Palace benefit, that Brat Grand Mist will also benefit. This will greatly affect the future of the hidden immortal continent. Naturally, we won't fight if we can. Mournful cries of the 6 armies, angry for a beauty. Nangong Tianji looked up and laughed. Xiaohua, if you fall today, your name will be remembered in the future. The 9th princess and our Nangong family's reputation will be even more resounding. Xiaohua nodded. This Xiao also thinks so. Xinxin has done so much for this Xiao, to have the Nangong family and even the 4 families as a wedding gift. This story will definitely be passed down through the ages. As Xiaohua's voice fell, the Kunlun mirror in Xiaohua's hand activated. A beam of 9-colored light shone down on the dawn and sunset cliff. 200,000 Fortune Gate's iron army charged out in formation, exuding a cold-blooded and stern battle intent. Not to mention the 4 families' patriarchs, even the clouds in the sea of clouds were stirred up. Sure enough, it's the capital star formation. The Fortune Gate's iron army's reputation is well-deserved. Dongfang Qianghao nodded and praised when he saw the Fortune Gate's disciples forming 2 battle formations. Nangong Tianji sneered, everyone's rumors are ridiculous. What Fortune Gate's iron army's disciples are all 5th level and above. It seems like most of them are nascent soul realm cultivators. We're making a big fuss over a minor issue. Isn't that better? Baiming Chuiqing laughed. Your Nangong family's prestige will be enhanced by annihilating the Fortune Gate. Nangong Tianji's gaze swept over Baiming Chuiqing, and just as he was about to speak, Dongfang Qianghao frowned and said, Tianji, prepare to meet the enemy. Nangong Tianji's heart skipped a beat, and he nodded. Then he waved his hand, and a colorful flag the size of a palm appeared in the air. This colorful flag expanded in the wind, and 2 Nangong words that were embroidered with colorful silk threads appeared on it. As Nangong Tianji breathed out a mouthful of true energy into the flag, 5 colored clouds flew out from the 2 Nangong inscriptions. As the clouds surged, countless bean-sized disciples wearing golden armor rushed out with weapons in their hands. Flag of hidden troops? When Chu narrowed his eyes and looked at the tens of thousands of disciples falling in the air. They turned into the size of an ordinary person and said in a low voice, This is the weapon of the ancient Confucian. I thought it had been lost in the hidden immortal continent. I didn't expect the 4 great families to still have it. Fellow Daoist, Xiaohua asked worriedly, how do you feel now? Battle spirit. When Chu's tone was as sharp as sword chi as he said, all the heartache, pity, and regret from before have now turned into battle intent. We'll only know the answer after this battle. That's strange. Xiaohua said curiously, you still don't know why this happened. It's like looking at flowers in the fog, fishing for the moon in the water. When Chu nodded and said with a smile, let's fight. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. All right. Xiaohua replied and looked out of Chaomu Cliff again. At this time, the Nangong family's battle team had finished assembling. There were also 200,000 disciples wearing golden armor. Most of them were scholars, and their strength was about the same as the Fortune Gate's battle team. Similar to the Fortune Gate's formation, the 200,000 Nangong family disciples were also divided into a dozen or so smaller formations. In front of each formation, there was a disciple with Grandmaster or Martial Grandmaster Cultivation holding a colorful flag. As these disciples waved their flags, the 200,000 Nangong family disciples slapped their own heads and released their true chi. 1-1. Although the righteous chi in front of the sunset cliff had already dissipated, the several 100,000 Nangong family disciples activated their cultivation techniques, and a large amount of righteous chi poured down. Rays of light flashed, and inscriptions flowed, and a dozen golden chrysanthemums appeared in the air. These dozen chrysanthemums looked as if they were made by heaven. Every petal and every pattern was resplendent, and a powerful aura surged out. In the air above the Fortune Gate's battle team, the air started to vibrate and flow violently. When autumn comes, 8th of the 9th month, when my flower blooms, 100 flowers will die. The incense bursts into the sky, and the entire city is covered in golden armor. The poetic words formed a killing intent that pounced towards the Fortune Gates disciples. The 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples in front of them were naturally not the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples that had swept through the Thousand Demons' sacred grounds, nor were they the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples that had fought against the devil race in the ancient ruins. However, among these 200,000 disciples, 10,000 of them were the Fortune Gates disciples that had swept through the Thousand Demons' sacred grounds. When they saw the Nangong family's disciples charging towards them, they had already given the order. The battle intent of the heavenly star formation soared to the sky as they faced the enemy head-on. Although the 400,000 disciples had yet to clash, the wind and clouds above the morning sky cliff had already changed. Layers of dark clouds formed in the sky, and tornadoes tore the dark clouds apart. A heavy pressure that could destroy a city gradually formed. The Fortune Gates disciples are indeed powerful. Nangong Tianji's face turned solemn as he said in a low voice, "Although they are not as miraculous as the legends say, they are evenly matched with my Nangong family's battle team." After this battle, that Nangong Tianji stopped talking and didn't say anything else. Beside him, Baiming Choqing laughed loudly and said, "Brother Tianji, you are too stingy. Although today is a matter of our four great clans, it is also a good thing for your Jingyin. If you don't contribute, who will? However, seeing that our four great clans are one, how can my Baiming family stand idly by when the Nangong family is facing the enemy?" Baiming Choqing roared and took out a bronze arrow from her waist. She threw it into the air and shouted, "Come out and meet the enemy." When the command arrow landed in the air, the blood-red clouds surged and the sound of war drums rang out from the command arrow. As the war drums rang out, the command arrow expanded rapidly. Groups of Baiming family disciples in light blue armor charged out from the command arrow with weapons in their hands. "Garrison order." When Chu revealed the origin of the arrow and said with a smile, "It seems like the four great clans are also taking out their trump cards. The previous Hidden Troops flag and the current garrison order are both ancient military saint artifacts that have been lost since ancient times. I didn't expect them to appear together today. No wonder Immortal Emperor Go-Qin is worried about the four great clans." Chapter 46:15. Xiao Hua snorted and said indifferently, "It's just a temporary imperial artifact. How can it be compared to my Daoist artifact?" "You're right, fellow Daoist." When Chu nodded and said, "The garrison order, the troop concealing flag, the troop gathering drum, and the troop withdrawal gong are the four ancient imperial artifacts recorded in the history books of Confucian cultivators. If I'm not mistaken, they're all in the hands of the four great families." 200,000 disciples of the Baiming family flew out from the garrison order and formed a team. True energy and rosy clouds surged out from the disciples and condensed into a snowy plum blossom in the air. These 200,000 disciples of the Baiming family surrounded the other side of the Fortune Gates disciples under the command of their commander. The momentum was terrifying. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He raised a finger and pointed at the Kunlun mirror, saying, "So, the four big families are really planning to destroy my Fortune Gate. It looks like this war will not end until one side is dead. Good, since that's the case, this old man will not hold back today and let you see the strength of my Fortune Gate's disciples." Boom boom boom. Several light pillars rushed out from the Kunlun mirror. Roar roar roar. Another team of Fortune Gate's disciples roared and rushed out from the Shenhua continent. This team of disciples was different from the previous ones. When they rushed into the sky, they condensed into the shape of a rooster. It was the plentiful sun devil devouring immortal array. Baiming Choqing was stunned. He was not surprised that Xiao Hua could take out more disciples, but the immortal array formed by these disciples. This plentiful sun devil devouring immortal array was young. Lightning surged around the Fortune Gates disciples, and the soaring aura was like the scorching sun pouncing on the Baiming family. The snowy plum blossom was already showing signs of withering. Baiming Choqing's shock was destined to not stop. When the 200,000 disciples lined up neatly, The murderous aura was like an unsheathed sword. He could not help but whisper, "Damn it, how many nascent soul disciples does the Fortune Gate have? Didn't they say there were 200,000? How come there are 400,000 now? Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" Shimin Jianzhong sneered. He also raised his hand and took out an ancient copper gong from somewhere. The copper gong was engraved with many armor inscriptions. These armor inscriptions glowed like silver orchids. Shimin Jianzhong didn't say anything. He flicked his middle finger and hit the gong. Bang! A soft sound was heard. The inscriptions on the gong began to move along with the sound of the gong. Rays of light gushed out from the surface of the gong and the inscriptions jumped down like fleas. When these inscriptions landed in the air, they transformed into the disciples of the Shimin family wearing silver-white armor. The Shimin family disciples roared as they landed in the air. They flew out of Dawn and Dawn Cliff and quickly formed into battle squads. In the time it took to finish half a meal, the 200,000 members of the Shimin aristocratic family had formed into an orchid-like battle team. An elegant yet formless aura filled the air once again. Furthermore, this aura combined with the aura of the other battle squads and trapped Dawn Cliff firmly. Kill. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the provocation and mockery in the eyes of the four great families' patriarchs. He coldly shouted a single word. The word kill turned into a ball of light and flew into the Kunlun mirror. Another pillar of light appeared and the Fortune Gate's battle squads rushed out once again. Heavens! Nangong Tianji looked at the Fortune Gate's disciples flying out like carps crossing the river and couldn't help but groan. Just how many disciples does this Fortune Gate have? When I saw that the profound yellow board was filled with Fortune Gate's disciples, I was already shocked. However, when I heard that they had 200,000 disciples sweeping through the Thousand Demons' sacred grounds, I was even more shocked. They have 600,000 disciples. 600,000 nascent soul realm disciples. This Nangong Tianji didn't know how to continue. He couldn't help but look at Dongfang Qianghao. He knew that a battle squad of 600,000 nascent soul realm disciples was enough to wipe out the 100 schools of philosophers from the hidden immortal continent. Even the four great families weren't willing to provoke such a powerful opponent. Dongfang Qianghao's eyes narrowed slightly. The brilliant young eyes hidden in his eyes couldn't help but shine like the sun. The shock in his heart wasn't any less than Nangong Tianji and the others. He had already known about Xiaohua's rise from his family's secret report. Moreover, he had also carefully read all the information about Xiaohua. Of course, he didn't know much more than Fairy Xingyu. Although the Dongfang family's ability to gather information was stronger than star-picking houses. In Dongfang Qianghao's eyes, although Xiaohua was powerful, he was the same as the Grand Mist Ancestor and the other powerful Dao sect cultivators on the hidden immortal continent. In terms of individual strength, he was close to the peak of the 9th grade. However, in terms of the strength of his sect, each and every one of them was weak. Dongfang Qianghao and the patriarchs of the four great families had the same countermeasure to deal with this kind of Dao sect cultivator. After all, the purpose of a cultivator's cultivation was to ascend. When one reached the final step of cultivation, no one would be willing to risk their lives. As long as they didn't lose face, they wouldn't kill fiercely. Although this kind of cultivator was fierce, in the end, if it wasn't for the fact that their lifespan was limited and they couldn't break through the bottleneck, they would die of old age. Otherwise, they would be killed by the four great families. After all, a person's energy was limited. It was impossible to be vigilant against tens of thousands of disciples at all times. However, when Dongfang Qianghao heard that Xiaohua had 200,000 disciples, he couldn't sit still. 200,000 nascent soul disciples. Not 2,000 but 200,000. This was something that had never happened on the hidden immortal continent. There had never been a Dao sect with 200,000 disciples on the hidden immortal continent. In particular, Dongfang Qianghao could see that the Fortune Gate had a close relationship with the Immortal Palace. Whether it was to destroy the Dao sect or to limit the Immortal Palace's strength, the four great families couldn't let the Fortune Gate continue to exist on the hidden immortal continent. Therefore, after receiving Nangong Tianji's message, he made the decision today. However, the patriarchs of the four great families, including Dongfang Qianghao, didn't expect that the previously unknown Xiaohua had already surpassed their expectations. Although they had already mobilized 200,000 disciples from their respective sects to surround the Fortune Gate's 200,000 disciples and annihilate them, Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror gave them a resounding slap in the face. Today, not only would they not be able to defeat Xiaohua, they would most likely be defeated. Since they had already come to this point, Dongfang Qianghao couldn't retreat. He raised his hand and took out a fist-sized drum and threw it into the air. Dong! As Dongfang Qianghao spat out a stream of qi on the drum, the small drum suddenly expanded and turned into a light projection that resembled a city gate. Waves of battle cries rang out from the city gate. Groups of Dongfang family's disciples in golden armor flew out valiantly. When these disciples stood still outside the cliff, there were at least 300,000 of them. The army formed by these 300,000 disciples was similar to the three aristocratic families from before, also in the shape of a bamboo flower. Their golden brilliance was mixed with soaring battle intent as they charged toward Xiaohua's Chaomuya. However, Xiaohua, who was standing on Chaomu Cliff, didn't activate the Kunlun mirror. Instead, he frowned and whispered to Wenchu beside him. There was a trace of anxiety on Wenchu's face. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Dongfang Qianghao coldly snorted and ordered, Zhenzhong, Tianji, Chuiqing, prepare yourselves. Don't let the palace of literature's master escape. In today's battle, not only will we destroy the Fortune Gate and dispel the North Star's delusion, but we will also leave behind the 5 Qi unification art. After the three great families' patriarchs responded and Dongfang Qianghao was about to give the order, Xiaohua, who was standing on Chaomu Cliff, seemed to have noticed something different. He casually raised his hand again. Boom! The Kunlun mirror rumbled again and groups of Fortune Gate's disciples flew out again. Dongfang Qianghao was dumbfounded, Shimen Zhenzhong was dumbfounded, Nangong Tianji was dumbfounded, and Baiming Chuiqing was dumbfounded. The 4 Fortune Gate disciples' eyeballs spun rapidly as they watched the Fortune Gate disciples fly out one after another. They were still calculating how many Fortune Gate disciples would fly out, but when they saw more than a dozen Fortune Gate disciples flying out, the 4 Fortune Gate disciples completely gave up. Dongfang Qianghao's gaze swept across Shimen Zhenzhong and the other 2. His eyes were filled with shock and regret. The 300,000 Fortune Gate's disciples not only consisted of humans but also dragons. A total of 300,000 disciples formed a heart-cleansing winnowing basket formation. A huge shadow of a leopard appeared in the sky above the battlefield. Layers of air currents surged in the sky. The shadow seemed to be alive as it roared and pounced on the bamboo flowers. The 900,000 disciples from the 4 great families and Fortune Gate's disciples had already caused a change in the weather. The morning and evening lights began to sway under the rapid absorption of the righteous energy and heaven and earth origin energy. Even the 2 Chaomu cliffs that stood tall like jade pillars were swaying. Needless to say, the sea of clouds at the bottom of the abyss seemed to be stirred up by a giant hand. Strange hissing sounds could be heard as if a powerful monster was howling at the bottom of the abyss. Seeing that their advantage in numbers was gone, Dongfang Qianghao hesitated. In his life, he had never hesitated as much as he did today. Even when facing Immortal Emperor Go-Chen, he was calm. He had lost his usual decisiveness. My sons. While Dongfang Qianghao was pondering, Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the patriarchs of the 4 great clans. His eyes flashed with deep mockery. Xiaohua raised his hand again and shouted, "The Immortal Palace has been shaken by your might after you all cleared the Confucian cultivators' Xianhuang list. However, the 4 great families still have the intention to destroy my Fortune Gate. Today, you even set up a battle formation at the Chaomu Cliffs to kill my Fortune Gate. Everyone listen to my command. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will definitely retaliate. Kill." Chapter 46:16. Kill. 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 Kill! The 4 battle teams shouted the word, kill, repeatedly. Every time they shouted, the morale of the Fortune Gate disciples rose by a notch. After the 4th shout, the 900,000 Fortune Gate disciples' morale soared. The 4 battle teams charged towards the 4 families' battle teams. Dongfang Qianghao was filled with regret, but he didn't have time to say anything. He raised his hand and tapped on the drum, causing it to soar into the sky again. Dong dong dong. The sound of the drum resounded through the sky. Kill! Following Dongfang Qianghao's command, the 4 flowers moved, emitting a dazzling light as they pounced on the Fortune Gate's disciples in the form of rabbits, golden crows, leopards, and roosters. As soon as the 2 sides' disciples came into contact with each other, a thunderous boom rang out, and light and clouds splashed in all directions. Xiaohua glanced at Wenchu and said, "Fellow Immortal, earlier, the 200,000 Fortune Gates disciples swept through the 1,000 Beast sacred grounds, several hundred high-grade disciples cleaned up the mysterious yellow list, and the soaring Dragon Mountain ranges Xiao country established their country were all to intimidate ordinary Confucian cultivators, so that they wouldn't dare to underestimate our Fortune Gates disciples. Today, our 900,000 Fortune Gates disciples are fighting against the 4 families. This is the time for our Fortune Gate to establish our might on the hidden immortal mainland. After this battle, our Fortune Gate will be like the scorching noon sun, shining with invincible brilliance and looking down on the 3 continents." Wenchu also felt pity at this time. Looking at the 2 sides fighting, there were already people screaming and falling into the abyss. He said, "I still underestimated the human heart and humanity. I really didn't expect that there would be such a big battle today. Maybe there will be a fierce battle at the soaring Dragon Mountain range." "It doesn't matter." Xiaohua smiled faintly and said, "Even if there is a fierce battle, 100,000 disciples and fellow immortal Feng are enough. I don't believe that the 4 families have the strength to spare to attack the soaring Dragon Mountain range." Wenchu nodded and said, "Their goal is the 5-Qi unification technique, so there shouldn't be any problems. Fellow immortals, it's time to come out and meet the 4 most ancient families on the hidden immortal mainland." Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed at the Kunlun mirror. The lightning Daoist and celestial being flew out of the light pillar. Xiaohua smiled and said, "I'm afraid these 2 fellow immortals won't be able to hide from the eyes and ears of the 4 families. Greetings, fellow Daoist." The Thunderbolt Reverend and the Celestial landed in midair. However, they instantly understood the current situation of the battle. The Thunderbolt Reverend and the Celestial cupped their hands and bowed. This poor Daoist truly did not expect that the 4 great clans would actually want to attack first. After Xiaohua and Wenchu returned the greeting, they smiled and said, "I'll have to trouble the 2 of you again today. Daring to have designs on my Fortune Gate, daring to disturb I's cultivation, all of them deserve to die." The celestial being spat viciously, "May I know which one friend wants me to kill? Let's go, we'll go take a look. We'll kill whoever suits our tastes." Xiaohua smiled and flew out of Chaomuya. Seeing Xiaohua and the other 3 flying out, the patriarchs of the 4 great families also flew out on clouds. However, right after the 4 of them flew out, more than 10 white-haired old men also flew out. These old men were dressed differently, following behind different patriarchs. Obviously, they belonged to different families. A 9th-grade origin energy literature saint? Xiaohua exclaimed in shock when he saw these old men. Is there really a literature saint with strength comparable to a literature star in this world? Wenchu didn't find it strange at all. He said indifferently, "The true cultivation system of us Confucian cultivators is to refine essence into qi, refine qi into spirit, refine spirit into the void, and refine the void into the heavens. The so-called scholar, master of literature, grandmaster, great-grandmaster, literature saint, and literature star are just some titles. They are different from the Tao Gates Qi refining, foundation establishment, and nascent soul realms. As time passes, it's inevitable that people will misunderstand. A literature star is actually similar to a great sage in the Thousand Demons' sacred ground. Without great fortune, one can't be called a literature star. As for fortune, the 100 schools of thought should have their own secrets, not to mention the 4 great families. Every generation's patriarch would become a literature star. But what about those literature saints who are not weaker than the patriarchs? Although they don't have any fortune, they can still cultivate. Refining the heavens and refining the void doesn't care if you have the merit of teaching them. So what if they are 9th-level literature saints? The Celestial sneered, they are just some middle-level 9th-level Confucian cultivators. When Chu glanced at him, the Celestial replied, but what if 4 or 5 middle-level 9th-level Confucian cultivators and 1 upper-level 9th-level Confucian cultivator attack you? Kill them all. The Celestial spat out 3 words. However, after a moment, he turned around and asked, fellow Daoist Xiao, can I borrow your disciple's weapon? Xiao Hua understood that the Celestial was talking about Yuan Ya's bone spear. He smiled and said, of course. Yuan Ya is also your disciple. The Celestial nodded. I know. After the Celestial finished speaking, Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the bone spear. The Celestial took the bone spear and waved it in the air. Swoosh! A wave of demonic chi surged out from the bone spear. The roar of the bone dragon came from the depths of the demonic chi. Damn it! Dongfang Qionghao's heart tightened when he saw the Celestial take out the bone spear. He subconsciously looked at Shimin Jinzhong and the others. The 4 of them exchanged glances and shook their heads. Forget it. Dongfang Qionghao gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, today, I'm afraid that the Fortune Gate's reputation will be ruined. Our 4 great families will be humiliated. Nangong Tianji's mouth was filled with bitterness. He looked at Xiao Hua, who was flying over proudly, and remained silent for a long time. The Nangong family was about to lose more than the other 3 great families. Not necessarily. Baiming Chou-Chin was unwilling to give up. Our goal is not to fight. Today, we only need to capture the Literature Palace Master and it will be a complete victory. That's right. Shimin Jianzhong gritted his teeth and said, exchanging 900,000 disciples for the 5 Qis unification technique is worth it. Good. Dongfang Qionghao also made a decision in his heart. He waved his hand and said, since that's the case, we will act according to the plan. Don't let Gaochen see any flaws. Xiao Hua, Wen Chu, Lightning Daoist, and the Celestial had already met up with Dongfang Qionghao, Shimin Jianzhong, Nangong Tianji, and Baiming Chou-Chin. The abyss between the Dawn and Dusk Cliff was different from the 2 sides of the Dawn and Dusk Cliff. The void overlapped and compressed together like soft straw. Strands of black and white clouds with the aura of the stars and moon wandered freely in this unstable space. The wind in the sky was more biting cold than ordinary space. Wherever the wind blades landed, even the rocks would be cut open. Xiao Hua and the others' divine senses were not obstructed at this high altitude. When their divine senses swept through the space, they could even create layers of ripples. More than 20 supreme cultivators of hidden immortal continent had already spread out, standing high up in the sky. Their expressions were like water. Sounds of fighting, screams, and the sound of magical treasures and imperial tools colliding with each other faintly came from under everyone's feet. It seemed that they had already said too much. At this point, both sides no longer had any extra words to say. Xiao Hua and Dongfang Qionghao's gazes met, and sparks seemed to appear in the air. The 2 of them roared in unison and flew out. However, Dongfang Qionghao glanced at Xiao Hua coldly. His figure flashed, and in a flash, he passed by Xiao Hua and pounced on Wen Chu. In the eyes of the arrogant Dongfang Qionghao, only the master of the Wen Chu Palace was his real opponent. As for Xiao Hua, he could only leave it to Nangong Tianji. Nangong Tianji, who had been planning for a long time, could finally face Xiao Hua, who was about to trample on his sect's face. His eyes were already red. Xiao Hua sneered. Why would he care who his opponent was? Since the Nangong family had delivered themselves to his door, He was also overjoyed. Lightning flashed around Xiaohua's body as he used the Heavenly Law's embodiment technique. His golden body, which was several thousand feet tall, was formed. He immediately clenched his right fist and smashed it towards Nangong Tianji. Nangong Tianji didn't show any signs of weakness. When he saw Xiaohua activating his avatar, he also opened his mouth. Dozens of vast chi pillars fell from the sky and smashed onto his body. Nangong Tianji also activated his avatar and chased after Xiaohua. The few Wen saints behind Nangong Tianji were also arrogant. They activated their avatar and surrounded Xiaohua. Then they waved their fists and legs and pounced on Xiaohua. Xiaohua's fist collided with Nangong Tianji's fist. A huge shockwave surged out. Xiaohua staggered under the force of Nangong Tianji's fist. He seemed to have lost his balance. The few Wen saints who were pouncing on Xiaohua actually swayed slightly. However, the multicolored light around them flickered. They received the impact and attacked Xiaohua's back. Bang bang bang. Although Xiaohua was in a sorry state, he still tried his best to raise his leg. With a flash of golden light, an illusory figure appeared like a wave and kicked the bodies of the Wen saints. When the Wen saints saw that Xiaohua's fists and legs were not a match for Nangong Tianji, they sneered in their hearts. They waved their fists and legs toward Xiaohua. Bang bang bang. Several gusts of wind rose again. Xiaohua's golden body was sent flying in the air by the two Wen saints. However, the two Wen saints' avatars did not have any special changes. Following Xiaohua's retreat, the other Wen saints had already arrived. Their fists landed on Xiaohua's back. With a flash of golden light on Xiaohua's back, a powerful rebounding force rushed out. The two Wen saints actually staggered. However, the radiance on Xiaohua's back did not even dim in the slightest. Seeing that Xiaohua's fists and legs were ordinary, but his golden body was indeed extremely powerful, Nangong Tianji sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew that he might not be able to gain the upper hand in a physical fight. Thus, he raised his hand and slapped his own head. A mottled five-colored true qi surged out. Similarly, the Wen saints did not dare to fight Xiaohua head-on. They also raised their hands and slapped their own heads. Several streams of four-colored true qi gushed out and transformed into several large hands that fell down. Oh my! The four great families indeed live up to their reputation. Although Nangong Tianji's five-colored large hands were somewhat impure, the large hands that were formed were as hard as jade. They were even more powerful than Wen Chu's five-colored large hands. Xiaohua could not help but praise this true qi transformation technique. I'm afraid that there are very few people in the world who can compare to it. Chapter 46:17. Several large hands fell down, tearing the void apart. The power of space firmly confined Xiaohua within a few dozen miles. Not to mention escaping, even the wind had to stop. This spatial energy was completely controlled by the Nangong family's Wen sages and Wen Chu, who were at the 9th grade of essence energy. Good, watch this Xiao's move. Xiaohua was not afraid at all. He roared and slapped his head. Boom boom boom. Several thunderous roars rang out, and lightning spewed out like a tidal wave. It condensed into a giant lightning hand in the air and grabbed at the five-colored giant hands. Gotcha! Swoosh! Under Xiaohua's thunderous giant hand, the Nangong family's giant hands all stopped. The true energy and inscriptions that were previously flowing like flood dragons were now as stiff as dead snakes. No matter how hard Nangong Tianji and the others tried to activate them, they still couldn't do as they wished. A kind of deathly aura that was like autumn frost directly passed through the giant hands and spread towards everyone's bodies. Damn it! Nangong Tianji roared. He opened his mouth, and a mouthful of true qi fell into the giant hands. At the same time, several Wen saints followed suit and spat out their true qi. As their true qi fell into the giant hands expanded and clashed with Xiaohua's lightning hand. The lightning was like a flood dragon, crazily pouncing on the giant hands, while the true qi was like a dragon, fiercely counterattacking. The battle between the Nangong families Wen Chu had already affected the surrounding several hundred li. When Xiaohua and Nangong Tianji made their move, they had already flown up carefully, trying their best not to affect the disciples under them. However, the spatial storm still came crashing down like waves, and thousands of disciples were swept into it. Whether it was the capital Heavenly Star Formation or the Nangong family's battle formation, they were all messed up. Some disciples were even accidentally thrown into the abyss. The Fortune Gate's disciples were better off. After all, some of them had experienced the battle between humans and devils, and they often used some methods to train their disciples. These methods were all stored in the Fortune Gate's training grounds on the Shenhua continent. Of course, these training grounds were built by the Lightning Daoist himself. On the Shenhua continent, the Lightning Daoist and Jade Archive Xiaohua were close to gods. They could do a lot for the Fortune Gate's disciples, and many of them were close to the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, the Fortune Gate's method of training disciples was far superior to the four big families. This was also the reason why the Shenhua continent was able to produce an unstoppable army. What's more, the disciples that the four great clans brought out were mostly their hidden strength. Not to mention that there weren't many soldiers in the hidden immortal continent, there were very few large-scale battles. These disciples themselves had even less experience in battles. This battle highlighted one of the Fortune Gate's disciples' strengths, and that was their ability to survive in a battle between two extremely powerful masters. The Fortune Gate's disciples split into groups of 3 to 5, supporting each other as they tried to escape from the storm's range. Even if they couldn't escape, they remained calm, waiting for an opportunity to escape as their bodies plummeted to the ground. There were even some who were even bolder and actually used the spatial storm to attack the disciples of the four great clans. It was just this little bit of experience and training. After the spatial storm, the disciples of the four great clans had already lost quite a few. Nangong Tianji and the others naturally didn't care about the lives of the disciples within several hundred li of them. Not only did the five-colored giant hand tear the space apart, even the faintly discernible earth, fire, wind, lightning, and other auras in the sky were torn apart. It was as if the sky was collapsing, and the entire space smashed toward Xiaohua. Looking at Xiaohua's lightning giant hand, the 5 fingers were already different in color, and the entire hand was filled with lightning. Although it wasn't as condensed as Nangong Tianji's 5-colored giant hand, it was superior in terms of the purity of the lightning, and the momentum of the lightning was terrifying. Seeing the lightning hand wave, the space between Xiaohua and the hand was immediately sucked dry. Countless hurricanes and indescribable fluctuations rushed out from the torn space, violently pouncing towards Xiaohua. This storm, which could instantly kill an ordinary cultivator, fell on Xiaohua's golden body, but it only set off some ripples of golden light. Boom boom boom. The thunderous hand clashed with several 5-colored hands, and a destructive aura that was even more powerful than the collapse of the heavens and the earth rose from the sky. The thunderous hand was shattered, and countless thunderbolts flew in all directions, smashing into the void and shattering it. The 5-colored hands were also torn apart, and the translucent jade-like hands turned into countless fragments. Countless fragments also turned into fragmented aura and disappeared into the void. Violent gales rose, and the storm rolled. Within 1,000 li, the wind and clouds surged. Even someone as strong as Nangong Tianji staggered, and the protective light around his body was also blown away like a candle in the wind. With Nangong Tianji in such a state, those 9th-grade essence energy literary saints were even more embarrassed. Their bodies lost their balance, and they quickly rushed out of the storm. These literary saints were also shocked. Just a casual clash of divine abilities could cause such a huge commotion, and Xiaohua actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position even when fighting against so many of them. This was something they really didn't expect. However, in this world there were only more surprises, but no more surprises. Just as they were about to get out of the range of the storm, suddenly a light figure rushed out from the lightning fragments. Xiaohua's tall and thin figure actually went against the wind, and with the help of the wind, he instantly appeared in front of them. What is this guy doing? The cultivation method of the literary saints of Confucianism was different from that of the Taoism cultivators. They had always emphasized practicing. Moreover, the true 5 qis unification technique was to refine the 5 viscera and 6 bowels. The cultivation methods of the 4 major families were incomplete, but there were more or less traces of the true cultivation methods. Therefore, most of the disciples of the 4 major families would refine their bodies while refining their qi. When these literary saints saw Xiaohua suddenly appear, they were surprised, but they weren't particularly afraid. In fact, they were even a little confused. After all, they believed that the cultivation of their physical bodies was definitely stronger than that of the Taoism cultivators of the same level. Moreover, Xiaohua didn't gain any advantage when he was surrounded by so many people. Instead, he seemed to be losing. Seeing Xiaohua's figure appear, he waved his fist, and like several phantoms, he landed on several literary saints. These literary saints' hearts were filled with disdain, and the same thought emerged from the bottom of their hearts: damn it. My divine abilities may not be as powerful as a human Mahayana stage cultivator, but didn't we already see the power of my fists and feet? It's just that I'm a little stronger and my skin is thicker. Therefore, while these literary saints were on guard against Xiaohua's backup plan, they also slacked off and swung their fists and legs to meet the enemy. There was even a literary saint who actually used the eye-clearing technique to test the strength of this punch. In the distance, Nangong Tianji also ignored Xiaohua's sudden intrusion, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Amidst the fierce wind, his figure strangely flashed with multicolored light, turning into a distorted light shadow, and rushed behind Xiaohua like lightning, preparing to gang up on Xiaohua with the other literary saints. As expected, Xiaohua's fist collided with the fist of one of the literary saints. A sound that wasn't very loud rang out. When Sheng, who had a smile on his face, suddenly had a change in expression the instant his fist came into contact with Xiaohua's fist. This was because he saw that Xiaohua's fist had suddenly shrunk, and a black halo of light had unexpectedly appeared in the air. Not good. When Sheng, who was proficient in body cultivation, immediately sensed that something was wrong from the force of the fist coming into contact with Xiaohua's fist, and an unavoidable feeling arose spontaneously. However, before he could open his mouth to warn the others, Xiaohua's fist had already landed. The sound of the explosion wasn't loud, but the power was extremely great. Nangong Tianji and the others could see that the literary saint's subbody, starting from the fist, followed by his arm, all the way until half of his subbody collapsed with a loud bang, and countless inscriptions were annihilated in the collapse. In this collapse, the noble qi turned into a vortex, and pieces of flesh and blood burst out at the same time. On the side of the collapsed subbody and physical body of the literary saint, more than 10 layers of space appeared, and the flesh and blood of the literary saint were swallowed by the void, and could no longer be recovered. Damn it! Seeing the power of Xiaohua's fist, Nangong Tianji cursed inwardly. He realized that Xiaohua's previous move was just a tactic to lure the enemy. He hurriedly sped up and sent out a palm strike, wanting to attract Xiaohua's attention. Unfortunately, just as Nangong Tianji came to his senses, Xiaohua's fist wind pounced towards the other literary saint. That literary saint had long been scared witless after seeing the power of Xiaohua's fist. He didn't dare to take Xiaohua's fist head-on, and tried to move his body to dodge. It was also at this moment, woo! The sound of the wind rose again, and under the body of the literary saint, Xiaohua's legs stretched out from the void, and kicked the waist of the literary saint. The strength of a leg has always surpassed the wind of a fist. When Xiaohua's leg landed, the subbody of the literary saint collapsed bit by bit, and an oval-shaped black hole fell into the body of the literary saint. The literary saint screamed miserably, and a bloody light appeared at the collapsed area again. His subbody rapidly shrank, and his physical body was almost cut in half. At the same time that Xiaohua succeeded in killing the second literary saint, Nangong Tianji's palm also arrived. Contrary to Nangong Tianji's expectations, Xiaohua didn't dodge at all. Seeing Xiaohua so confident, Nangong Tianji suddenly thought of the situation when Xiaohua was hit by the 2 literary saints, and he couldn't help but feel that things were not good. Another loud sound rang out. Nangong Tianji's palm was indeed accumulating strength. If a mountain was here, it would probably be pushed down by his palm. Xiaohua wasn't a mountain, and naturally, he couldn't block Nangong Tianji's palm. However, Xiaohua's golden body was sent flying by Nangong Tianji's palm. Xiaohua's golden body instantly collapsed, and the golden light was quickly extinguished. Xiaohua's figure actually pounced on the third literary saint. How could Nangong Tianji not know Xiaohua's plan? The tricks that ordinary martial artists often used in the competition were actually used by the Daoist sect's Grand Ascension Stage cultivators in this supreme battle. This was not only beyond Nangong Tianji's expectations, but it was also out of Nangong Tianji's expectations. Nangong Tianji couldn't help but gnash his teeth and say, "Damn it! Borrowing strength to fight strength." You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.